Chapter 1205. Even Shinjilia himself felt a little scared when he thought about it. His footsteps gradually slowed down. Shinjilia turned his head and looked at Oming's eyes. At that moment, Oming's eyes were empty, unfocused, and without purpose. With such a pair of eyes he must be blind, Shinjilia frowned. He stretched out 2 fingers and waved them in front of Oming. How many fingers are these? When Oming heard that, he seemed a little surprised. Then he said calmly, 5. When Shinjilia heard that, he felt that this guy was pretending to be blind. He asked suspiciously, how did you know? No idiot would wave 2 fingers in front of a blind man, right? Shinjilia's face darkened. You were pretending to be blind. As he spoke, Shinjilia's eyes were fixed on Oming's face and his eyes, for fear of missing any details. However, Oming's eyes were still blank and unfocused. He looked, it didn't look like he could see it. Under Shinjilia's suspicious gaze, Oming chuckled and said, so, did I guess right or wrong? Shinjilia didn't say anything. He still stared at Oming's face. Oming raised his eyebrows and asked in a mocking tone, are you really that retarded? You're wagging your fingers around? Shinjilia was speechless. Shinjilia turned around uncomfortably and retracted his fingers. Then he pulled Oming toward a Cantonese restaurant not far away. Behind Shinjilia, Oming's lips curled into a triumphant smile. It was very shallow and fleeting. Shinjilia suddenly thought of something. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Oming. When he saw that Oming's expression didn't change, he looked around and pulled Oming toward a Sichuan restaurant. However, as soon as they entered the door, Oming immediately stopped and pulled Shinjilia back. He said, don't eat spicy food. How did you know? Shinjilia looked at Oming with a triumphant expression. You were pretending to be blind, weren't you? Oming asked, is there something wrong with your nose or is there something wrong with your brain? Can't you smell such a strong smell? Shinjilia was skeptical. He sniffed. It seemed like there was indeed quite a bit of smell. Shinjilia was a little reluctant, but he quickly pulled him out again. After following Shinjilia into the dining room, Oming obediently sat down at Shinjilia's table. The waiter quickly served them tea in the menu. Lily hadn't returned yet. Shinjilia tossed the menu to Oming and said, order whatever you want to eat. Oming reached for the menu and put it aside. His eyes were unfocused as he asked, what kind of restaurant is this? Cantonese cuisine. Shinjilia looked down at his hand and asked, you can't smell it this time? There's the smell of a purifier here. Shinjilia blushed with shame. He took a whiff and realized that there really was a little of it. Shinjilia took the menu and muttered to himself, damn blind man. His nose is pretty sharp. Chapter 1206. Oming was so hot that he sucked in air. The cup rolled a few times before it fell to the ground and shattered. Shinjilia was shocked and frowned. Soon she took out a tissue to wipe him clean and pulled him up. She pulled Oming's hand up and saw that his skin had been scalded red. The waiter quickly came over to help clean up. Seeing the red skin on Oming's hand, he said, sir, do you need some ice to apply to your wound? Okay, thank you, Shinjilia said on Oming's behalf. Unexpectedly, Oming gently pushed Shinjilia away and said, why didn't you remind me that there was boiling water in front of me? When Shinjilia heard that, he felt a little baffled and said, who knew you would knock it over? You deserve to be scalded to death. Oming's face darkened and he said, Shinjilia, even if you're testing me, there should be a limit. I only have one hand left and it hurts like hell. How am I going to eat later? His voice was sonorous, and his interrogative intent assaulted everyone's senses. Shinjilia's face darkened. Do you want me to feed you? Oming didn't say anything and sat down again. Seeing this, Shinjilia knew what Oming meant. Does that mean Lily should feed it? What a joke. Shinjilia sat back down unhappily. Soon he received a call from Lily. Shinjilia gave Lily the address and the table. He hung up the phone and poured Oming a glass of water. Lily called Oming's mother, but it wasn't Xiao Ziqing who answered the phone. It was Oming's father. When Huijin heard what Lily had to say, he looked shocked and said, I see. Laowen is in Fujian too. Perhaps Oming's mother asked Laowen to fetch him. We'll be at ease leaving it to Laowen. As Lily listened, she found it a little strange, but she couldn't pinpoint exactly what was strange about it. After exchanging some pleasantries with Huijin, he hung up. Lily called when Fenglin again, but he seemed to be busy on the other end. Lily called him a second time before he picked up the call. Lily, what's the matter? Uncle Wen, I heard that you are also in Fujian. Are you here to pick Oming up? When Fenglin heard that, it was as if the matter had just occurred to him. He said, yes, yes. If you hadn't reminded me, I would have forgotten about it. Xiao Qiao asked me to bring Xiao back, but I'm busy right now. Are you with Oming now? If I don't fulfill my promise to Xiao Qiao, I'm afraid there will be some trouble in the future. Lily, you're a good girl. Do me a favor and take care of Xiao first. When I'm done with my work, I'll bring Xiao back, okay? When Yu Lily heard that, she felt a little awkward and said, Uncle Wen, I've already broken up with Oming. If I continue to take care of him, I'm afraid. It's okay. Lil O likes you the most. He won't mind. But she minded. Oming's mother hates me. It's better if I don't get involved with her. Chapter 1207. Yu Lily held the phone that had been hung up on. She had mixed feelings. How could this be? Oming's mother had passed the phone to Oming's father, and Oming's father had pushed the matter to Uncle Wen. Was Oming really their child? He must have been picked up. Leaving a blind man in such an unfamiliar place, wasn't this committing a sin? Then Yu Lily remembered again. Oming had a wide network of friends. He had friends from all over the world. Although they weren't close friends, there would definitely be a lot of people trying to curry favor with Oming after hearing his name. For such a person, as long as he made a phone call, would he be afraid that he wouldn't be able to eat or drink well? Or could it be that he didn't want others to see him like this? The more she thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Yu Lily suddenly felt a little sad. In the end, it was all because of his pride. Yu Lily had no choice but to go back. After making a phone call to ask for Shinjilia's current location, Yu Lily rushed there. As soon as she arrived, Yu Lily found Oming holding a towel in his hand. That hand didn't look right. Yu Lily couldn't help but look at it and asked, What's wrong with your hand? It was scalded by boiling water. Oming put down the towel in his hand and took the initiative to open his hand. It looked a little serious. There were blisters on the back of his hand and his palm was also red. How did it get scalded like this? Yu Lily frowned and reached out to take Oming's hand. Seeing that it was obviously in pain, she didn't feel comfortable. She turned to look at Shinjilia and said, You can't even look at a blind man properly. You're really? He wants to test if I'm really blind. Oming was the first to complain, but he didn't finish his sentence. Oming didn't need to say more. Yu Lily could guess what he was going to say next. So, he put the boiling water in front of him and deliberately scalded him? When Yu Lily heard that, she looked at Shinjilia with a layer of reproach. When Shinjilia heard that, his eyes widened and he quickly retorted, Hey, can't you finish your sentence? You were the one who knocked it over. Don't accuse me wrongly. But you asked me several times if I was pretending to be blind, and then I spilled the water. It really makes people think too much. Oming said confidently. His eyes were unfocused but his voice was sonorous. F***CK, are you saying that I deliberately harmed you? I didn't say that. You said it yourself, Oming said calmly. He didn't sound angry at all. Shinjilia felt even more wrong than Do-E, especially when he saw the obvious distrust in Yu Lily's eyes. He felt even more hurt. This damn blind man. You even know how to complain first. Now that Oming was in a weak position, it was human nature to choose to trust the weak. Shinjilia had already lost the initiative. No matter what he said, Yu Lily would assume that he was quibbling. What was even more frightening was that after Oming complained, he used the trick of retreating in order to frame him to jump into the pit himself. F***CK. What the hell is this? Oming is such a schemer. Shinjilia was furious, but he didn't know what to say at that moment. Chapter 1208. Yu Lily didn't continue the topic. Oming was a little disappointed. However, it seemed that Shinjilia already had a small flaw in Yu Lily's heart, didn't he? Oming sat calmly. There was ice in the towel in his hand, so his hand didn't hurt so much. He said, I haven't ordered yet. I was waiting for you to come. I can't see the menu and this guy doesn't want to read it to me. Shinjilia said, When did you let me read it? You know I can't see it but you still threw the menu to me. What do you mean by that? Oming asked. Then Shinjilia caught Yu Lily's gaze again. Shinjilia was about to go crazy. He thought that Oming would really be honest after he was blinded. He didn't expect that it was all an act. He pretended to be honest in front of me and waited for Yu Lily to come back to attack him. This method is too despicable. But it is indeed the truth. Shinjilia couldn't even say a word in rebuttal. Especially after he caught Yu Lily's gaze, he was even more angry at Oming. Then I'll order, Yu Lily said. She called the waiter and listed a few of Oming's favorite dishes. After that, she gave the menu to Shinjilia and asked, What do you want to eat? Shinjilia's mood had been almost completely blown away by Oming. After randomly ordering a few dishes, he put the menu back. They were now sitting in a booth facing each other. 2 people could sit on each side. Ming sat alone and Shinjilya sat with Lily. The dishes were quickly served. Ming held the towel in his hand and said calmly, "My hand was scalded. I can't hold the chopsticks. Lily, feed me." When Lily heard that, she looked at Ming's hand. It did look a little serious. It was red, swollen and blistered. Must be very painful. Unexpectedly, before she could react, Shinjilya stood up and walked to the side of Ming's seat. He said, "Your hand was injured because of me. Let me feed you." Shinjilya took Ming's bowl and said, "What do you want to eat? I'll feed you." Lily pursed her lips and smiled. She said, "Then I'll leave it to you. Feed it well." As she said that, she picked up the chopsticks and ate slowly. "No, I can't eat if he feeds me. It doesn't matter. You can't see it anyway. You can just treat me as a stunning beauty." Shinjilya picked up his chopsticks and picked up some food. "Come on, open your mouth." Ming looked away with a look of disgust. "There's no beauty as ugly as you. This is the first time I feed someone." Well. Ming's mouth was tightly shut and his eyes were closed. He had a look of despair on his face. "Do you want to eat it or not?" Lily glanced at him and lowered her head to eat. Shinjilya put down his bowl and picked up his chopsticks. He sighed and said, "Why did you have to do that? What's the point? If he angered Lily, he wouldn't be able to get away with it. Maybe Lily would just leave him behind and then, she would go back to the hotel with him and leave the little blind man alone and helpless." Shinjilya's heart was in turmoil and he looked proud. "Let's do it. Let's see who's more ruthless." Chapter 1209. Ming's stomach ached and he called out, "Lily, I'm hungry." Lily looked up at Ming from the corner of her eyes. Then she looked down and said casually, "Then eat." "Who wouldn't let you eat?" "Feed me." His voice and tone were indifferent, no different from usual. But at this time, it sounded like she was acting coquettishly. "Shinjilya, feed." When Shinjilya was called, he immediately straightened his back and volunteered, "I'll feed you." Ming was reluctant, but when he thought of his current situation, "Do you want to feed me to death?" "Killing is against the law, big brother. If I want to kill you, I have to find a cleaner way." Shinjilya rolled his eyes. "So, are you going to eat or not?" "I want to drink soup." Shinjilya reluctantly gave him a bowl of soup and placed it in front of him. "Feed me," he said in a commanding tone. Shinjilya was unhappy and said, "Who are you talking to? You hurt my hand like this. Of course you're the one who should feed me." Ming's tone was indifferent, without much emotion. Shinjilya smacked his lips and turned his head to call out, "Waiter, bring me a straw." Ming was speechless. Lily was speechless. The straw was quickly brought over. Shinjilya stuffed it into Ming's mouth and stuck it into the bowl for him to drink. Ming seemed particularly well behaved that day. Such a comical scene was rarely seen. Lily couldn't help but smile. She quietly picked up her phone and recorded a short video. "Does it taste good?" Lily asked. "I can't. There's residue at the bottom." Ming didn't seem to realize that he had been secretly filmed. He lowered his head and said, "Can't you help me hold the bowl? My hands aren't that long. Let Shinjilya hold it for you." Shinjilya saw that Lily was recording, so he quickly covered his face and said, "Just make do with it. If you're blind, don't act like that. Go back to sleep after eating." Then Shinjilya picked up his chopsticks and picked up some food and rice. He lifted Ming's chin and said, "Open your mouth and eat." Ming looked reluctant, but he still opened his mouth and ate the rice. "Good boy, eat more." Shinjilya picked up more vegetables and rice and stuffed them into Ming's mouth. Ming hadn't even finished his first spoonful, and now another spoonful came. His entire mouth was stuffed. Lily chuckled and asked, "Is it delicious?" However, Ming's mouth was full of rice and he couldn't speak at all. "Ah." Shinjilya finally let out a sigh of relief. "Is it delicious? Would you like some more?" As Shinjilya fed her, he texted Lily, "Don't I look like the landlord's silly son?" Lily couldn't help it and almost spat it out. One of them held onto the sofa and laughed so hard that his shoulders shook, but he didn't make a single sound. When Shinjilya saw her smile, he laughed along with her. But neither of them made a sound. Ming chewed the rice and quietly squeezed the hand holding the towel. This meal, Shinjilya fed Ming until he was full. After leaving the dining room, Shinjilya took Ming's hand and went to Lily's side, whispering something. From time to time, Ming could hear Lily's laughter. The displeasure and resentment in his heart grew deeper and deeper. Chapter 12:10. When Feng Lin got out of the taxi and stood at the majestic and elegant entrance, his face was full of emotion. Rui Art Association. There was a gathering every 3 years, and the time of the gathering wasn't fixed. This time, when Feng Lin had received a last-minute notice and had come to Fujian to attend to Oming's matter. The moment he got out of the taxi, he saw a few luxury cars stopping in the distance. Compared to them, his style seemed a little shabby. When Feng Lin didn't mind, he carried his bag and walked up. Among the people who got out of the luxury cars, there were people about his age. There were also people from Oming and Yu Lily's generation. There were quite a number of them. It looked like the scale of the event this time was much larger than the one he had attended 9 years ago. When Feng Lin swaggered in, and quite a few people recognized him. A young man walked up. When he saw Wen Fenglin, his eyes were filled with surprise. He asked, "Are you Senior Wen Fenglin?" Wen Fenglin looked at the young man and realized that his face was somewhat familiar. For a moment he couldn't place him. He smiled and nodded his head. "That's me. Hello. My name is Zhenli. My father often mentions you to me. And your father is?" "Zhen Xianlang." When he heard the name, Wen Fenglin immediately understood. He laughed heartily and shook hands with him. "I didn't expect his son to be so big already. You must be 25 this year, right?" Zhenli was a little embarrassed. He shook his head and asked, "Do I look that old?" When he heard that, Wen Fenglin found it a little strange and asked, "Did I remember wrongly?" "I'm 21 this year. After the new year I'll be 22. Let's go, Senior One. This way please." This time it was Wen Fenglin's turn to be embarrassed. He smiled and nodded his head. There were quite a number of people who recognized Wen Fenglin. After all, the name of the wandering artist was too well known. As the associate director of the art association, Zhen Xianlang had been inside for a long time. When he heard others mention Wen Fenglin, he was surprised and quickly came forward. After more than a decade, Zhen Xianlang looked very different from before. When they were young, both of them were handsome and dignified. After not seeing each other for so many years, the two of them had become more and more casual. Zhen Xianlang had a crew cut. His hair was short and black just like when he was young. He was tall and strong and looked very healthy. His eyes were big and brimming with energy. His facial features looked well defined, but there were obvious wrinkles on his face. When Wen Fenglin saw Zhen Xianlang, he felt a sense of familiarity. When Zhen Xianlang saw Wen Fenglin, the joy in his heart overflowed onto his face. He went forward and gave his good friend, whom he hadn't seen for many years, a big hug. "It's been a long time, brother." Wen Fenglin chuckled and patted him on the shoulder. "That's right. I didn't expect you to have a second child. I thought you'd never get married." When Zhen Xianlang heard this, the smile on his face froze slightly. Seeing that something was wrong, Zhenli quickly said, "Dad, it's time to eat. Let's go inside." "Yes, let's go inside." Chapter 12:11. Brothers in the past, love rivals in the past, old friends now and memories now. In the end he was still an outstanding young man. With a family like the Zhen family, how could he possibly remain unmarried for the sake of a woman? Wen Fenglin had already expected this, but he couldn't help but feel disappointed. "Xian, you chose the wrong person. Yu Lily had arranged for Oming to stay so far away from the hotel because she didn't want Xinjilia to know. Now that Xinjilia knew, and Yi Qianqian also knew that the friend she was talking about was Oming, Yu Lily brought Oming to the hotel she was staying at. There was a large shopping mall near the hotel. Yu Lily brought Oming there to buy a few changes of clothes before she checked into a room with him. When they returned to the hotel, they realized that old Mrs. Shen and Yi Qianqian hadn't returned yet. Regardless of whether they called Xinjilia or Yu Lily, the result was the same. It was normal for one person to be like that, but if both of them were like that, then something wasn't right. Yu Lily and Xinjilia were a little worried. Yu Lily said, "Why don't we go look for them together? It can't be that both of their phones ran out of battery, right? If it was really just that their phones ran out of battery, then everything would be fine. But what if?" It was a very scary thing to think about. Xinjilia was even more afraid. "I'll go look for them. Wait for me. I'll bring Oming to the room and then we can go together." After Yu Lily said that, Oming's grip on her hand tightened. Xinjilia looked at Oming. He was a little reluctant, but it wasn't good to leave him alone. After thinking about it, he said, "Forget it. You'd better stay here. If I can't find them, then you can come with me to look for them." Yu Lily looked down at Oming, who was holding her hand tightly, and nodded her head. "All right. Be careful. After Shinjilia left, Ming's whole body relaxed. Lily clearly noticed the subtle changes in him. She was a little amused. She took the key card and took him to find a room. After entering, Ming didn't want to let go and said, I haven't showered in a few days and I'm not wearing proper shoes. I'm so dirty. His meaning couldn't be clearer. He just wanted Lily to help him bathe. Lily pretended not to understand. She threw the clothes she had just bought for him onto the hotel bed. She opened the package of the men's boxers and threw it to him. Then she found a bathrobe for him and said, Go take a shower. My hand is burned. Ming stretched out his hand and said, It hurts. It's burning. I think it'll hurt even more if I touch hot water. Indeed, there were blisters. Lily pulled his hand over and felt the pain just by looking at it. Uncle Wen said he would come and pick me up after he's done with his work, but I haven't heard from him yet. By the time he comes to help me bathe, I'm sure I'll be stinking. When Lily heard that, she looked up and asked, Have you contacted Uncle Wen? Yes, he seems to be very busy recently. Yes, Uncle Wen had repeatedly reminded her to take good care of Ming. Ming didn't look like he was being taken care of at all. Chapter 12:12. When Ming heard that, he smiled and nodded his head. Okay. Lily took off her coat first. She was wearing a thin white long shirt and a pair of tight black leggings. She unbuttoned her cufflinks and rolled up her sleeves. She took off Shinjilia's coat and said, Take off your clothes first. Okay. Ming was very cooperative. After Lily unbuttoned his shirt, he followed her into the bathroom. They had known each other for 7 or 8 years. Even if she saw him naked, Lily wouldn't be too shy. After all, she was already used to it. But her current identity. It was a little awkward. Taking a deep breath, Lily walked in to fill the bathtub with water, but she found that the room didn't even have a bathtub. How do I wash it? A shower? Ming, there's no bathtub. Why don't you go to my room to wash? I've already taken off my clothes. It's so troublesome to put them back on. Let's do it this way. What if the water splashes your hands? I won't get wet if I'm careful. Ming didn't care. He walked forward, opened his arms and said, Come on, let's finish this quickly. Indeed, it was too inconvenient for Ming to put on clothes with his hands. Lily couldn't be bothered. She turned on the showerhead and tested the temperature. After confirming that the temperature was suitable, she let Ming hold the showerhead. Lily took off his clothes quickly and helped him wash his hair. But Ming was too tall. Lily couldn't reach him at all. She reached out and pressed his shoulder. Squat down. Okay. Ming was very obedient. He was so obedient that even Lily felt a little surprised. After washing his hair, Lily stuffed the showerhead into his hand and grabbed a towel to help him dry his hair. Unexpectedly, Ming held the showerhead and sprayed it on Lily's body as if he didn't have eyes. Lily exclaimed and took a step back. But it was too late. Most of her body was already wet. Did you get wet? Ming seemed to realize something and stood up apologetically. I can't see. Ming's attitude was so sincere that Lily couldn't get angry. She sighed, dried his hair and said, It doesn't matter. It has to be washed anyway. Then, shall we shower together? As he spoke, he turned the showerhead to the side and poured water over Lily's body. Lily swallowed all the words that were on the tip of her tongue. Forget it, he can't see anyway. Let's bathe together. It's not like we haven't bathed together before. It'll be fine after I send him to bed later. She stood on her tiptoes to help him dry his hair. Lily didn't notice the distance between them. As for Ming, he could clearly smell the fragrance that belonged solely to her. Looking down, Lily was soaked. Her thin white shirt stuck to her body, outlining her exquisite and well-proportioned figure. The neckline was slightly open, and the seductive snow-white skin was overflowing with seductive fragrance. The white bra was clearly outlined, and the plump peach that was wrapped in it was ready to come out. It made one's blood boil. Chapter 12:13. Hearing this, Ming came back to his senses. He touched his nose and said blankly, I have a nosebleed. Lily was frightened. She stood on her tiptoes and reached out to touch his forehead. Then she touched his face and asked, Where are you feeling unwell? Quick, I'll help you get dressed. Let's go to the hospital. Lily was scared out of her wits. No, I feel uncomfortable. Ming touched his nose and then poured the showerhead on his nose. Lily was stunned. She seemed to think of something and subconsciously lowered her head. Ming was shocked. He quickly pulled her and said, I'm fine. Let's continue. Are you sure? Lily reached out and touched his face, and then touched her own face, but she couldn't feel anything. She patted him on the shoulder and said, "Squat down a little." When Ming heard that, he bent his legs. Lily put her forehead close to his, trying to feel his temperature. However, it didn't seem to make much difference. If he didn't have a fever, why would he have a nosebleed? Before Lily could figure it out, Ming moved his lips forward and kissed her lips accurately. Lily was stunned. Before she could react, Ming held her in his arms and stood up straight. Lily was held by his waist, so she was unprepared to be pulled up. She subconsciously stood on her tiptoes. Ming gently pushed her against the glass door of the bathroom. His lips kissed her lips and his movements were hot and eager. Lily was firmly suppressed and couldn't say anything. She stared at him and pushed him and her body struggled. The shower head was thrown to the ground and the water kept splashing up, drenching them both. The temperature climbed inch by inch. Ming's thigh pressed her against the wall, and his hot big palm was strong on her body. From the waistline to the bra, Lily struggled more fiercely. However, unintentionally, her thigh clearly touched a hot and hard spot. At that moment, Lily finally understood the reason. What a beast. He's blind, but he's still in heat. She opened her mouth angrily and bit down hard on his tongue. Ming was caught off guard. His tongue was bitten and he released her out of habit. Pervert. Lily spat and reached out to push him. You're so troublesome just to take a bath. Don't expect me to help you bathe in the future. Ming covered his mouth and cried out, "It hurts." As he spoke, he loosened his grip, revealing the bright red blood on his palm. Lily glanced at him, but then she seemed to think of something and stared into his eyes. Ming frowned and refused to look at Lily. Lily felt even more strange. She stretched out her finger and waved it in front of his face as she asked, "Can you see? Otherwise, why would he have a nosebleed for no reason? Otherwise, why would he have such a huge reaction?" When Ming heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He neither shook his head nor nodded. His eyes were unfocused as he stared blankly ahead and asked, "Do you care so much about this matter?" His words were filled with hurt. When Lily saw this, she quickly waved her hands and explained, "No, I just feel strange. How can you have such a big reaction when you can't see?" Chapter 12:14. Lily's face heated up when she heard that. Ming stepped forward again and said, "I think of the time when you and I were together. When we were in the bathroom having fun, that feeling, it was really great." Lily's face heated up even more. Looking at Ming's approaching face, she pushed him away and yelled, "You pervert! Are you going to take a shower or not?" "Yes." Ming leaned over and said in a low voice, "Didn't we say we'd shower together?" With that, he caressed Lily and whispered, "Let's shower together." Lily slapped his hand away, but Ming's hand seemed to be fixed there. The familiar and unfamiliar feeling made Lily blush even more. She felt a little uncomfortable talking. She pushed him away and said, "I'll help you shower first. Get out of my way. I'll go get the shower gel. Let's do it together. I'll help you take it off." With that, Ming's hand fumbled with her buttons. His large palm brushed against her skin through her clothes, causing Lily to tremble sensitively. "Your hand?" Lily looked down and saw the blisters on his hand. "Doesn't it hurt?" "It hurts." Ming lowered his hand and said, "If it hurts, you don't have to use your hand." With that, he squatted down and lowered his head to feel it inch by inch. His warm breath fell on her skin, and Lily felt her body tense up. The throbbing feeling spread from the skin that he had touched to the rest of her body. Ming lowered his head and bit her button. She didn't know if it was intentional or not, but his teeth always grazed her skin. It didn't hurt, but it brought about a different kind of wonderful feeling. Lily's breathing slowly became rapid, but she quickly regained her senses. She pushed his head away and said righteously, "Ming, I only listened to Uncle One and took care of you for the time being. Don't think too much about it. I have no intention of getting back together with you." "But I do." Ming leaned forward again and whispered, "I want to get back together with you. I want to be with you. I want to marry you. I want to have children with you." It's the same words again. When Lily heard that, she no longer found it romantic. Hearing that, he snorted coldly and said, "Saying the same thing once will have an effect, but saying it again and then standing you up. Is it fun?" "I'm serious, Lily. Really, I'm serious. The Civil Affairs Bureau is open tomorrow. Let's go back and get our marriage certificate, okay?" Ming hugged her with one arm and whispered in her ear. "Enough." Lily pushed him hard and snorted. "Do you think I will still believe you? How many times have you said the same thing? You can secretly count it yourself. Ming felt a pang of pain in his heart. Yu Lily's reaction was both unexpected and within his expectations. Fortunately, he had yet to reveal his final trump card. Ming took a step forward and said, It's my fault. I'm sorry. I didn't believe you. I'm blind and disabled, so I feel inferior. I didn't want to hold you back, so I said those things to you. Chapter 12:15. Such self-ridiculing words fell into Ming's ears and made him feel even more uncomfortable. The woman in front of him clearly had reddened eyes and was on the verge of collapsing with tears, but her voice didn't reveal anything at all. If he really couldn't see, he would definitely be deceived by her. But he could see, and he saw everything. This woman has always been so stubborn. It's not shameful to show weakness occasionally. Can't she show weakness a little? Ming's heart was stuffy and painful. He lowered his eyes and still did not dare to look up. He whispered, I know I have done a lot of wrong things. Give me another chance, okay? I should say this to you. Yu Lily held his face in her hands and finally couldn't help it. Her voice was a little choked. Tears fell uncontrollably. Yu Lily quickly raised her head and held back her tears. After taking a few deep breaths, she said, Give me a chance to choose, Ming. I don't want to be with you anymore. He always asked her to give him a chance, and she gave him one. But every time, it would only result in deeper humiliation. Every time, I will deal with my mother. We won't go home in the future. We will live outside so you won't meet my mother. Ming reached out and pulled Yu Lily's hand. Let's go back to Kingstown tomorrow. We will go to the Civil Affairs Bureau, get married. Ming, you are always like this. Yu Lily shook him off. Talking to yourself. You always think that what you do is right and you never care about other people's feelings. Yu Lily looked at Ming in front of her, chuckled, and bent down to pick up the shower head. She lifted his hand with the cast and rubbed the shower head on his body. She said, Uncle Wen should come to pick you up tomorrow. If you want to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau, just go. It doesn't matter who you get married with, whether it's Shin Manting, Zhang Manting, or Li Manting. I know my identity. I will not interfere with your life in the future, nor will I enter your world, so you don't have to think about comforting me. I have money now and I am a cartoonist. I don't need to depend on you to live, and I don't need you to be responsible for me. After you go back, remember to live a good life and pretend that I never existed, okay? His voice became softer and softer. Yu Lily's throat was sore and she felt uncomfortable. Tears fell down and Yu Lily finally couldn't hold back her tears. But in the end she did not cry out. Biting her lower lip, she expanded the water and washed it over Ming's body. Ming took in Yu Lily's reaction. He pulled her into his arms and whispered, No, I won't allow it. There is no Shin Manting, Zhang Manting, or Li Manting. I only want Yu Lily. I don't want to marry anyone except you. However, Yu Lily smiled bleakly and hung up the shower head. For a moment, the water was rushing toward Yu Lily's head. Yu Lily closed her eyes and unbuttoned her clothes one by one. Soon she took off her top. Ming quickly lowered his eyes. His throat felt dry and his Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Feigning ignorance, he reached forward to touch it. Chapter 12:16. Ming's body stiffened. For a moment he didn't know how to react. Yu Lily saw his obviously stiff body and his obvious reaction. She bit her lower lip. She went forward to take a bath towel and put it on his head. You can go out. With that, she opened the bathroom door. Take 1 step forward, turn left, and take 3 steps out of the bathroom. After about 4 or 5 steps, you'll reach the bed. Ming's body didn't move. When Yu Lily saw that, her lips curled into a mocking smile. I'll get ready. Get ready? Prepare for what? Ming had an ominous feeling in his heart, but when he heard that, he didn't ask much. He felt his way out. Yu Lily turned the water on to the maximum and took a shower before walking out. Ming had already put on his bathrobe and boxers. He seemed to have sensed her coming out and turned his head in her direction. Yu Lily was wrapped in a bath towel. She walked forward barefoot and looked at Ming. Then she let go of the bath towel. Ming's body stiffened, and he sat in the same place without moving. Yu Lily didn't notice his reaction. Looking at his unfocused eyes, she pushed his shoulders and fell on the bed. Then her soft lips fell on his lips. Ming had never imagined that Yu Lily would do that. Subconsciously he reached out and hugged her. Yu Lily's kiss didn't go deep. She gently moved down and sucked on his Adam's apple. Ming's reaction, which had calmed down with great difficulty, suddenly rushed up again, and it was fiercer and more urgent than before. His reaction was too violent, and Yu Lily could clearly sense the change in him. Then she slowly kissed him inch by inch. Ming hugged her and buckled her up with his legs. He pressed her down with one hand to bring her closer to him. The warm and soft body pressed against his, and the wonderful feeling made his heart itch. But he didn't rush to do anything to her. The strange feeling in his heart grew stronger and stronger. There was something wrong with this woman. Ming knew her too well. The more she acted like this, the more he felt that something was wrong. What do you want? To give it to you. Yu Lily's words were straightforward. Don't you want it? I'll give it to you. Yes, very much. But how did Yu Lily change so much? This was not normal. Is there a but? When Yu Lily heard that, she rubbed her body against his, easily igniting his anger. In a low voice she said, but, after I give it to you we'll really break up. Just think of it as, having a breakup party. Breakup party? The fire in Ming's heart suddenly froze. What do you mean? After this, don't ever see me again. Yu Lily didn't look at his expression. She pressed on top of him, lowered her head and kissed his chest. You and I are not from the same world. Forcing ourselves to be together won't lead to a good result. Who said that? Ming gritted his teeth and said angrily, you said I was self-righteous. What about you? Surnamed you, you're even more self-righteous than me. Whatever you say. In any case there would be no future between them. Chapter 12:17. What last time? What breakup sex? When she said those things, did she ask for his permission? Ming was furious, but he didn't know what else to say other than to reject her. Ming turned around and faced his back to Yu Lily. Yu Lily was pushed away and for some reason she let out a sigh of relief. Looking at Ming's curled back she asked, you really don't want to? Ming was swollen to the point of pain. How could he not want to? Ming had no doubt that if there were any problems in the future, it would definitely be because of today. But if it was the last time he would rather not. He didn't want anything else. What he wanted was her, not the last time and definitely not the breakup sex. Ming pulled the blanket over his head and remained silent. Yu Lily picked up the towel she had just taken off and covered her body with it. Then I'll leave first. Leave. When he heard that word, Ming was even more sensitive and jumped up. He turned around and reached out to grab her. Opening his arms, he pulled Yu Lily into his embrace and said angrily, why are you leaving? Who said you could leave? With that, he carried Yu Lily and turned around to fall onto the bed. You're not allowed to leave. Aren't you blind? Yu Lily's back was facing him. She could clearly feel the warmth coming from him. She coldly smiled. How can a blind person hug me so accurately? This is called telepathy. Ming didn't have the slightest awareness of being exposed. He hugged her and nuzzled her neck. I can feel wherever you are. Otherwise, how do you think I chased you all the way here? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Yu Lily turned her head and looked into his eyes. At the same time, Ming closed his eyes and said, if you don't believe me, you can try. I can find you wherever you are, regardless of whether I have eyes or not. Yu Lily let go of his hand and wrapped herself in the towel and took 2 steps back. Ming closed his eyes and reached out to grab Yu Lily. Yu Lily's eyes darkened. She took 2 steps to the left. At the same time, Ming reached out to the left. Yu Lily went to the right and Ming did the same. She was pretty sure she hadn't made a sound. But Ming really seemed to have a telepathic connection. He could clearly sense her location every time. Throughout the whole process, Ming did not open his eyes. Yu Lily stepped forward to stand in front of Ming and reached out to touch his cheek. Would I never see such a proud man in the future? Would such beautiful eyes never be able to see again in the future? Yu Lily couldn't tell if she felt sorry for him or if she sympathized with him, or if she felt both. Ming closed his eyes and held her hand. In a low voice he said, in the future, even if I am blind, I will always remember your face. I will never forget you. Ming, do you love me? Love, she blurted out without hesitation. How much? Without you I will die. When Yu Lily heard that, she burst out laughing. He moved his hand away and tried to retract it, but it was held tightly. Ming's eyes were still closed as he held her hand. You don't believe me? Then do you trust me? I believe you. Still without the slightest hesitation. I don't love you. I don't want to be with you. Chapter 12:18. His eyes were full of pity. His dark brown pupils were bright and as deep as a lake at night. Yu Lily was clearly reflected in his eyes. When Yu Lily saw his eyes, her heart trembled slightly, and an unknown emotion surged. It rushed to her heart and then it rushed to her eyes. The liquid suddenly filled up and in a flash, it drooped down. Oming looked at her and covered her face with one hand. He whispered, "Why are you crying?" Hearing that, Yu Lily was even more sure that he had seen it. Just a moment ago she was still thinking about what he should do in the future. At that moment, Yu Lily felt that her heart was like a roller coaster, and the ups and downs were indescribable. Yu Lily couldn't help but pout, and the grievance in her heart suddenly came out. She opened her mouth and cried, and big drops of tears fell. When Oming saw this, he felt even more distressed. He pulled her over with one hand, kissed her wet hair and whispered, "Don't cry." The extremely gentle voice had its own unique charm. Her originally wavering heart was suddenly hooked back to him. Now even if she wanted to, she couldn't. Yu Lily lay on his shoulder and cried like a child. She shouted, "You liar." When Oming heard the childish yell, he smiled and coaxed her in a low voice, "Yes, I'm a liar. You clearly saw it. Why did you lie to me? Why did you do this to me?" Yu Lily raised her fist and punched him twice on the back. She didn't use much strength and it didn't cause any pain. Oming hugged her tighter and whispered, "I was afraid that you would hate me. How could I trick you into coming back if I didn't hurt myself? Even if you hurt yourself, I don't want to talk to you. If I didn't hurt myself, I'm afraid you wouldn't even look at me," Yu Lily said. What Oming had said that day was too cruel. He thought that he would really be like that for the rest of his life, leaving no way out for himself. Who knew? After waking up from a coma for 2 days, he could suddenly see. This kind of surprise brought Oming not only joy but also regret. He regretted his cheap mouth, regretted his impulsiveness. Based on Yu Lily's character, if she found out that he had recovered and wanted to get back together with her, she would probably run even further and faster. Now, although it wasn't the best time to confess, he couldn't pretend anymore. If he continued to pretend, he would be exposed sooner or later. He might as well confess himself and perhaps suffer less. If the incident in the afternoon happened a few more times, it would be enough to make him suffer. Recalling Shinjilia's prank in the afternoon, Oming gritted his teeth. After crying for a few minutes, she quickly wiped her face, straightened up and pushed him hard. Oming was pushed, but he didn't loosen his grip. Instead he tightened his grip. "Let go." "I won't." Oming's voice was calm, but there was no room for dispute. "The reason why I confessed so quickly was not to let you go." Yu Lily grinned. "Since you're fine, there's no need for me to take care of you anymore. You can let go. I'm going back." "Go back?" Oming's eyes darkened and he pulled her hard. "Your man is here. Where else are you going? Didn't we break up?" Chapter 12:19. Oming's voice was domineering with an indisputable tone of command. "I don't want to." Yu Lily pushed him away again. "You have no sincerity at all. Why should I get back together with you?" When Oming heard that, his eyes lit up. His heart was filled with joy. His lips unconsciously curled up as he asked, "What kind of sincerity do you want?" Yu Lily tried to shake his hand off, but she couldn't. With that movement, the bath towel, which wasn't wrapped tightly, fell off. Oming's gaze naturally fell on it. His eyes darkened and his emotions surged. His gaze was filled with a desire to possess her. He was like a hungry wolf that had seen meat. Yu Lily's hair stood on end under his gaze. She quickly covered her chest with her remaining hand. But, by covering the top, the bottom was exposed. Under Oming's naked gaze, Yu Lily's face became redder and redder. She reached out and covered Oming's eyes. "You're not allowed to look." Oming's only hand was holding onto Yu Lily's arm. Now that his eyes were covered, he couldn't move her away. His lips curled up in a good mood as he said, "Why can't I look at my woman?" "Who's your woman? You're so shameless." Yu Lily's voice was full of disdain. However, when he said these words, the corners of his lips curled up. Unable to control his emotions, his heart was overflowing with uncontrollable chaos. At that moment, Yu Lily felt like she was about to fly. "What should I do? I'm so happy." She was so happy that she didn't know what to do. Covering Oming's eyes, Yu Lily looked at his lips. She tiptoed forward and planted a kiss on his lips. However, after such a kiss, Yu Lily greedily wanted more and more. Her soft lips moved around his. Yu Lily stuck out her tongue and gently licked it. Oming's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Subconsciously, he tightened his grip on her wrist. He pulled her over and easily held her in his arms. But he didn't dare move again. "In your eyes, what's the difference between me and an inflatable doll?" Yes, of course there was. He had never used a doll. She had always been the only woman. He had never even touched a doll. However, if he behaved too horny, this woman would definitely be unhappy. Therefore he could not move. Yu Lily kissed him for a long time, but Oming didn't respond at all. Feeling defeated, she bit his lips in revenge. Oming felt the pain and quickly pursed his lips. He suddenly felt a little uncertain about what this woman was thinking. Yu Lily gritted her teeth and hit him angrily. What? You were the one I wanted just now. Don't you want it now? When Oming heard that, he was stunned for a second or two. Then he asked carefully, Can I? Yu Lily felt even more suffocated. She had already taken the initiative to this extent, and he actually asked her if he could? How come I've never seen him so honest before? Annoyed, Yu Lily pushed him away forcefully and shouted, No. Oming was caught off guard and stumbled, but he immediately curled his lips into a smile. He pulled her back and threw her onto the bed. Chapter 12:20. The pair of eyes in front of her were as bright as the stars, bright and full of spirit. Such a pair of eyes, this is Oming. Yu Lily's heart quietly rippled with joy. She quickly pushed him away and shouted, Get lost. Together. Yu Lily turned over and was about to crawl away, but Oming quickly put his arm around her shoulders. Oming was not wearing any clothes. He pressed her under his body and his hot lips fell on her smooth white back. Yu Lily turned her head and saw that his left hand was still in a cast. She quickly calmed down. Oming also clearly noticed her gaze. He leaned forward and kissed her gently, whispering, It's okay. Does it hurt? It doesn't hurt. Really? Yeah. Oming gently pressed her against him. Really? His lips reached out and kissed her neck. His movements were gentle and slow. The feeling of numbness spread all over her body little by little. Yu Lily was lying on the bed. Under his gentleness, she couldn't help but raise her head and squint her eyes. She reached back and put her arms around his neck. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. Oming's movements froze. At the same time, Yu Lily was also stunned. Turning to look at the door, Yu Lily and Oming looked at each other. They both thought of the same person at the same time. Ding dong. The doorbell rang again and it sounded a little hurried. Yu Lily quickly got up and pushed Oming away. After rolling over, she pulled the quilt over her body. She was naked, so of course she couldn't go out to see anyone. But her clothes were just soaked. Yu Lily was a little worried. She looked at Oming and asked, What should I do? Oming looked at Yu Lily, narrowed his eyes and asked, You and Shinjilya are together again? When Yu Lily heard that, she felt even more confused. She immediately retorted, How is that possible? She became even more annoyed. What do you mean by again? I've never been with him, okay? Then why do you look like you're having an affair? Oming looked at her with disgust. Then he leaned forward, squinted his eyes and whispered, Isn't it normal for us to be together? Even if we do something, it's none of his business. The doorbell rang twice more and this time, it sounded even more urgent than before. I can't. We broke up. Everyone knew that they had broken up. If this was seen, how embarrassing it would be. When Oming heard that, he became even more unhappy. He bent down and looked down at her face. He narrowed his eyes and asked, When did you break up again? Have you forgotten what you said in your house? Yu Lily didn't look scared at all. She stared at him and asked, Do you dare to remember what you said at that time? I forgot. Oming pulled her up. Don't remember that kind of thing. I had no choice but to say those words. At that time, I thought I would be blind for the rest of my life. My mother didn't like you and I didn't want to hold you up, so Yu Lily had already guessed it, but she hadn't expected Oming to explain it in such a way. Yu Lily pursed her lips and was about to say something when the phone in her bag rang. Without a doubt, it was Shinjilya. Yu Lily covered her body with the quilt and bent over to pick up the bag that had fallen on the ground. Before she could pick it up, Oming picked it up. He looked at it and saw that it was indeed Shinjilya. Chapter 12:21. Yu Lily was shocked. When she was about to grab it, she heard a voice coming from the other side. Lily? It was Shinjilya's voice. Yu Lily is taking a shower, Oming said calmly as he walked away. As he spoke, he didn't forget to glance at Yu Lily. Yu Lily's face quickly turned red and she shut her mouth and didn't speak. Shower? In Oming's room. Shower? What does that mean? Yeah. Oming didn't even blink when he talked big. He waved his hand at Yu Lily and motioned her to go to the bathroom. I'll open the door for you now. Wait a minute. Why didn't you open the door just now? I just pressed the doorbell for so long. If you wanted to open the door, you could have already opened it, right? Ming put on his bathrobe, tied it, and walked toward the door. When Yu Lily saw that he was really going to open the door, she covered the quilt and was about to go crazy. She quickly jumped out of the quilt and ran toward the bathroom. At the same time that the bathroom door was closed, Ming opened the door of the room. Shinjilya immediately rushed in at the same time that he opened the door. He looked around and finally his eyes fell on the door of the bathroom. When he got closer, he heard the sound of water coming from inside. Shinjilya was angry and looked at Ming. Ming was wearing a white bathrobe and holding a mobile phone in his hand. His eyes were unfocused and he didn't know where to look as he closed the door. But there was an indescribable pride in his expression. Shinjilya felt something was wrong and gritted his teeth. Why is she taking a shower here? She was wet, Ming said concisely. When Shinjilya heard this, his expression was even more desperate. What? Wet, Ming? Shinjilya stepped forward angrily and grabbed the collar of Ming's bathrobe. What did you do to her? Compared with Shinjilya's excitement, Ming seemed much calmer. His gaze was unfocused and he wasn't looking in any direction. However, such an expression seemed more like a provocation. What can I do? I can't see and my hand is broken. What else do you think I can do? When Shinjilya heard that, he felt that it made sense. Her heart relaxed a little, and she unhappily let go of Ming and pushed him away. Ming straightened his collar and said calmly, "Why don't you ask her what she did to me? Why is it wet?" Shinjilya, who had finally managed to calm himself down, became even more furious. He roared, Ming. Wet, showering, doing something to him? Could it be, Yu Lily went by herself? No, it can't be. Yu Lily is not that kind of woman. Why are you so excited? I'm so scared that I don't even dare to say it. Although he said that, he didn't seem afraid at all. Instead, it was filled with provocation. Shinjilya calmed himself down and asked, "What do you mean by that?" "She helped me take a bath and accidentally got herself wet, so now she's taking a bath. Is there a problem?" Shinjilya's expression darkened and he asked, "Help you bathe?" Chapter 12:22. Undressing, putting on clothes, showering and wearing underwear. Isn't that? Shinjilya couldn't even imagine that scene. He couldn't accept it. The woman he liked was helping another man put on his underwear, and they used to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Who could stand that? Stepping forward angrily, Shinjilya reached out and grabbed Ming's collar again. He gritted his teeth and roared, "Oh, are you shameless? You let a girl do this for you and you said it so loudly. What do you think Yu Lily is?" Ming was grabbed, but he didn't have much of a reaction. Hearing that, he laughed and said, "I didn't say it very loudly, did I? Why did you have such a big reaction? Yu Lily is my girlfriend. Isn't it normal for her to help me bathe and dress?" Bah! Shinjilya couldn't stand it anymore and his spittle splashed out. The smile on Ming's face disappeared. He reached out and wiped his face, pushing Shinjilya away. "Mr. Shen, don't go too far." "Who is the one who went too far? Didn't you break up? Why are you still so entangled? What? Is it because you're blind that the women who used to be entangled with you don't want you now? So you can only pester Yu Lily, right?" Shinjilya sneered. "That's right. Who can stand your mother's mouth? Both mother and son have the same mouth. Serves you right that no one wants you." The bright smile on Ming's face had disappeared, and it was replaced by an inexplicable smile. A pair of eyes looked forward without focus. Shinjilya knew that Ming couldn't see him, but he inexplicably felt a sinister chill. Ming looked calm and said, "In the face of the crazy bark of a loser, I can only give you sympathy." "You." Shinjilya's heart suddenly began to explode. He raised his fist and punched Ming's face in front of him. However, before his fist landed, he heard the sound of the bathroom door being opened. Shinjilya's movement stopped abruptly. He turned his head and looked over. The first thing he saw was a snow-white shoulder. Before he had time to see more, he heard Yu Lily scream and then the sound of the bathroom door being slammed. Yu Lily did it on purpose. Ming could tell that she was trying to calm Shinjilya down. Shinjilya had no idea what was going on. He stared at the door of the bathroom and his mind was filled with images of fair skin. Her white, misty skin was beautiful. Tempting and beautiful, it lingered in his mind. Shinjilya felt his mouth go dry. Suddenly, a huge force came from his side. Shinjilya staggered and fell to the ground. "Ouch!" Shinjilya screamed. He looked up and cursed, Ming. "Shinjilya." Yu Lily's voice came from the bathroom. Shinjilya was at the door of the bathroom. When he heard the voice, he looked up and replied, "Here." Is Yi Chan back? Can you ask her to bring me a set of clothes? My clothes are all wet. When Shinjilia heard that, he immediately realized that Ming must have done it on purpose. Chapter 12:23. Shinjilia quickly left. After Ming closed the door to the room, he knocked on the bathroom door and said, "Let's go. Open the door and let me in." "No. I don't have anything to wear. It's not like I haven't seen it before. Open the door. I have a secret to tell you." Yu Lily's back was against the bathroom door. She felt a little chilly without any clothes on. When she heard Ming's words, she hesitantly opened the door. Unexpectedly, Ming suddenly came in and held her with one arm. He lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. Yu Lily was completely unprepared for such a surprise attack. Her eyes widened and her hands were on Ming's chest. She struggled a little. Unexpectedly, Ming let go of her at once. Looking at her arms that were half covering her body, his eyes darkened. Shinjilia saw it just now. Saw it? Yu Lily was stunned, but she quickly understood what Ming was talking about. Yu Lily blushed. She could clearly see the displeasure in Ming's eyes and the obvious jealousy that surrounded him. Ming felt even more annoyed when he saw her delicate behavior. He pushed her against the sink and asked, "Why did you suddenly open the door? I can solve it myself. I heard that the situation wasn't right, so you opened the door and let the guy see?" Ming gritted his teeth in anger and pinched her nose. The guy's face changed when he saw it. It was like a male dog in heat. "I only stretched out my hand. I shouldn't have seen anything. You're still talking. I saw it all." Thinking of how Shinjilia had seen her bare shoulders, her heart felt like it had been scratched by a cat. Really? Yu Lily felt a little guilty and shrank her neck. Seeing her like this, Ming felt even more depressed. He lifted one of her legs and gritted his teeth. "Vixen." Yu Lily was shocked and quickly pushed him away. She shouted, "What are you doing? They'll be here soon." Ming hugged her tighter and kissed her neck. He pressed his lips against her skin and whispered, "I can't wait anymore. I've been holding it in for a long time. Don't you know?" Yu Lily pushed him and looked at the open bathroom door. She lowered her voice and said, "Are you crazy? What will we do when they come in?" "I can't get in. I locked it." Ming's lips moved lower and lower, igniting clusters of flames. Soon they burned brightly. Yu Lily hugged him and couldn't help but dance with his movements. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. When Yu Lily heard the voice, her body tensed up. She pushed Ming hard and exclaimed, "Stop! They're coming." But Ming didn't care. He pressed her against his waist and sank, ding dong, ding dong. She subconsciously clenched her fists. Listening to the hurried doorbell, she pushed him harder and harder. Unexpectedly, Ming acted as if he couldn't hear it. He lowered his head and kissed her lips. His actions were rough but gentle. Inadvertently, it had stirred up layers of emotions. The wonderful feeling made her want to cry out. Yu Lily reached out to cover her mouth. Her breath was heavy and lingering with the man in front of her, but she didn't dare to make a sound. Chapter 12:24. After all, there was a door between them, so the sound was not loud. But when she heard the sound, Yu Lily felt even more guilty and she felt even more excited. Ming looked up and saw Yu Lily's expression of pleasure, pain, and anxiety. He smiled and was quite proud of himself. He forcefully removed Yu Lily's hand from her body and slammed it into her with all his might. Ah! Yu Lily couldn't hold back and her throat let out a broken gasp. But she quickly bit her lower lip and lay on him to stop herself from making a sound. Ding dong. Ding dong. Ding dong. The doorbell kept ringing and it became more and more urgent and frequent. Shinjilia was outside banging on the door and shouting, "Damn blind man, open the door. I'm here to deliver clothes." It sounded like he was really angry. Yu Lily looked up and pushed him. She gasped and whispered, "Hurry up, all right?" Ming's lips curled into a smile. His already heavy movements became faster and faster. Yu Lily couldn't stand it anymore, and her breathing became more and more rapid. "Slow down." Ming chuckled and slowed down a little. He whispered in her ear, "Tell him to stop knocking. It will affect my normal performance." Yu Lily's face became even redder. She stared at him and growled, "Beast?" Ming raised his eyebrows slightly and his voice became longer. His movements suddenly stopped. "What did you say? Beast? What are you doing? That's not how sex works. Come on, I'll teach you." No, shoo, do you want him to hear what we're doing? Keep your voice down. Although he said that, his movements were not small at all. The man's suppressed breathing and the woman's suppressed voice were isolated by the door. His movements became more and more urgent, and the sound became louder and louder. It formed a completely different style from the hurried doorbell and the shouting of banging on the door. Ding dong. Ding dong. Lily was knocked around and her eyes were full of stars. The doorbell kept ringing and she didn't know when it stopped. This was definitely the most exciting and most difficult thing Lily had ever experienced. The doorbell rang again and a woman's voice came from outside. Lily, are you in there? Yi Chanshan knocked on the door. When she saw Shenjilia's furious expression, she felt some sympathy for him. How much time had passed and this man and woman were inside? If that was the case, then these two fellows were too bold. There was no response from inside. Yi Chanshan pressed the doorbell again and shouted, You Lily, I've brought you clothes. Just when Shenjilia thought that no one was going to open the door, there was a soft sound from the door, and it was quickly opened. When Shenjilia saw this, he immediately pushed the door open and entered. Ming was still wearing the bathrobe and he didn't look any different from before. Shenjilia was so angry that he roared, Why didn't you open the door? Ming was calm and composed. He didn't look like he had been yelled at all. He said calmly, I don't want to open it. When Yi Chanshan saw it, she couldn't help but take another look at him. This kind of attitude is even more infuriating than directly shouting back. So, why have you gotten over it now? Yi Chanshan couldn't take it anymore. Chapter 12:25. I waited for so long and you didn't open the door? Yi Chanshan felt that his words were not credible. She looked at him strangely and then looked into his eyes. She reached out and waved her hand in front of him. However, Ming still did not respond. It was as if he did not know that Yi Chanshan was testing him. Yi Chanshan pouted and walked to the door of the bathroom. Shenjilia wanted to come forward, but Yi Chanshan pushed him away and shouted, What are you doing? I'm bringing clothes to a girl. Do you want to go in? Hearing that, Shenjilia subconsciously looked at Ming. Ming acted as if he had not heard them. He turned around and groped his way to his bed. The bed was a little messy. At a glance, it was obvious that someone had slept in it. However, whether it was one person or two people who had lain on the bed, that would be. Thinking of this, Shenjilia was even more angry. If he had known this would happen, he would not have been so soft-hearted. Asking Lily to take care of this guy was like sending a sheep to the tiger's mouth. Yi Chanshan knocked on the bathroom door and shouted, Lily, it's me. The bathroom door opened quickly. Lily reached out her hand and said, Why are you so late? No one opened the door. We can't come in. Yi Chanshan was a little angry. She pushed the door and wanted to squeeze in. But anyway, your ex-boyfriend can't see you. You can just open the door. People who don't know will think you are doing something in there. This was a half-truth, half-lie mixed with a bit of testing. When Lily heard this, she immediately thought of what had happened, and her face suddenly became hot. That guy is so hateful. She had specially washed it with hot water and washed the sink for fear that someone would find any traces when coming in. This must be a guilty conscience, right? Or a secret affair? Thinking of this, her face became a little hot. I'm doomed. I can't let Yi Chanshan see this. He reached out and pushed Yi Chanshan out. Don't come in. Just give me the clothes. What are you afraid of? We are all women. You have clothes and I have clothes. As Yi Chanshan spoke, she subconsciously turned her head to look at Shenjilia. She found that Shenjilia obviously cared and wanted to come in. She felt a little sympathy. Why won't you let me in? What are you doing inside? For the first time, Lily felt that Yi Chanshan was so gossipy. She cursed in her heart. However, since she had already said so much, if she still blocked the door and refused to let her in, it would undoubtedly arouse more suspicion. Lily thought about it and loosened her grip. Yi Chanshan pushed the door open and walked in. She found Lily hiding behind the door with a red face. She was a little surprised and asked, Why is your face so red? Yi Chanshan's words made Lily's heart tremble. However, he quickly pretended to be calm and snatched the clothes from Yi Chanshan's hands. He glared at her and said, I don't have clothes to wear, so I had to turn the hot water to the maximum. How could I not turn red? Yi Chanshan was skeptical. She looked her up and down. It seemed that other than her skin being fairer than hers, her breasts being bigger than hers, and her waist being slimmer than hers, there was no other difference. Feeling Yi Chanshan's gaze on her, Lily suddenly felt lucky that Ming was a little more anxious than usual. Chapter 12:26. She flipped through her clothes and found that they were all there. Under Yi Chanchan's gaze, Yu Lily felt uneasy. She pushed her and said, "What are you looking at?" "You have them, so do I." "Yes, but they're not the same." Yi Chanchan turned her head away and said, "Go inside and put them on." "I'm going out. I failed to spy on the enemy. It seems that there's nothing. Shinjilia is thinking too much." After she went out, Yi Chanchan looked at Shinjilia and shrugged. "Well, it's late. Go back to sleep. I'll go back with Lily. I'll wait for you." It's not good for a girl to stay in a room with a man. Shinjilia's eyes were full of vigilance. He looked Oming up and down with obvious disdain. Oming leaned against the headboard and ignored him. Soon the bathroom door opened and Yu Lily came out. Her hair was half wet and stuck to her head. As soon as she came out, she met Yi Chanchan's and Shinjilia's eyes. She felt her scalp go numb. "You come here," Oming suddenly said and sat up. Oming suddenly opened his mouth and sat up. His blank eyes were unfocused and he didn't know where to look. Yu Lily saw it clearly and silently gave Oming's acting a thumbs up. But how could she go over? Now that they had broken up, they had to find a logical time to get back together. Ignoring Oming, Yu Lily turned around and took Yi Chanchan's hand. "Let's go back." "Yes, that's normal." Shinjilia breathed a sigh of relief and turned his head to look at Oming provocatively. Oming looked a little angry, but he still clenched his teeth and didn't say a word. "Let's go. Have an early rest, blind man. We're going back to Kingstown tomorrow. Stay by yourself." Shinjilia waved his hand and followed Yi Chanchan and Yu Lily. Yu Lily didn't look back. Shinjilia noticed this small detail, and he finally relaxed after a whole night of anxiety. Behind the two women, and in front of the blind man, Shinjilia didn't hide his emotions. His mood was clear at a glance. Oming watched him go out, narrowed his eyes and chuckled. Poor fellow, he really thought he had the upper hand. "Forget it, there will be time for you to cry." Yi Chanchan and Yu Lily were sent back to their room by Shinjilia. When she saw that Shinjilia had left, Yi Chanchan couldn't hold it in any longer. She pulled Yu Lily aside and asked curiously, "Hey, did you really bathe him? I heard from Shinjilia that you even helped him get dressed and undressed. Doesn't that mean you saw everything?" Hearing that, Yu Lily felt even more guilty. Not only had he seen everything, he had also done everything that he should and shouldn't have done. However, this was not the time to lose. Yu Lily coughed lightly, glanced at Yi Chanchan and said, "It's not the first time he's seen it. His eyes and hands are not convenient, so I..." Chapter 12:27. He, isn't it just he? Yu Lily immediately thought of the famous comedian Feiyu. Smiling secretly, Yu Lily pushed Yi Chanchan away and said, "Cut it out. How long has it been?" "How is it not long? I locked Shinjilia outside for almost half an hour. When he came to find me, I was taking a shower." Oh, his face was green. Poor thing. Yi Chanchan shook her head. "But your ex-boyfriend is also very good. Do you know what he said when Shinjilia asked him why he didn't open the door? The soundproofing was very good, so Yu Lily didn't hear what they said outside. But, with Oming's wretched expression, Yu Lily could guess what he had said just by imagining it. "What does it have to do with me? Don't want to open the door for you?" Yi Chanchan gave her a thumbs up. Then she mimicked Oming's expression and tone and said calmly, "I don't want to open it." Yu Lily smiled and looked as if she had expected it. She reached out and patted the pillow behind her. "Go to sleep. It's getting late." Yi Chanchan squinted and looked at Yu Lily suspiciously. "Your expression doesn't look like it when you talk about your ex. Don't tell me you..." "Oh. This girl has never been in a relationship. How can her eyes be so sharp?" Yu Lily turned her head and glared at her. She reached out and slapped her down. "What nonsense are you talking about? Seriously, have you ever thought about getting back together with him? Go to sleep. We'll talk about this tomorrow." She was almost exhausted. She had gotten up early and she had been dragged into the bathroom. Now her body was sore and aching. "You can sleep later. You tell me first." Yi Chanchan made up her mind not to let her rest. She pulled the quilt in her arms and asked, "That man is not a good person. If you get back together with him, Shinjilia will be too pitiful. Don't you see how good Shinjilia is to you? He likes you very much." "Boss Chanchan, I'm so sleepy. I'm really sleepy. Let me go." Yu Lily was half awake. She put her hands together and said, "Can we talk about it tomorrow?" No. She was sent by Shinjilia. How could she go back to the organization without completing the task? But Yu Lily didn't want to talk to her anymore. She closed her eyes and looked like she was going to sleep. When Yi Qianshan saw that, she heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Tell me, do you still like that ex-boyfriend of yours?" "I like it." Yu Lily pulled a pillow over and put it under her head. "You should have heard that I'm his sugar mommy." Yes. He had heard a little about it. However, hearing it from Yu Lily's own mouth, Yi Qianshan was still a little surprised. "He raised me for 3 years. He paid for my education, food, and life. He treated me very well, really very well." Yu Lily held the pillow, raised her face, looked at Yi Qianshan and said, "When I met him, I was only 17 years old and I gave all my firsts to him." Yi Qianshan hadn't expected Yu Lily to go into so much detail. She didn't know what to say. There was only one thought left in her mind: it's over. Isn't there no hope for Shinjilia? Then, will you get back together with him? Yes, of course he would. However, was it too soon to tell them that they had gotten back together? Chapter 12:28. When Yi Qianshan heard that, she immediately felt a little strange. Especially when she saw Yu Lily's serious expression, there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. This is the legendary envy, jealousy, and hate. Enough. Yi Qianshan couldn't hold it in anymore. She reached out with both hands and pushed Yu Lily away. With a disgusted look, she said, "Enough. You reek of love from head to toe. Disgusting." When Yu Lily heard that, she shook her head sympathetically. She covered her head with the quilt and turned over. She regretfully said, "The anger of a single dog." When Yi Qianshan heard that, her eyes widened. She immediately crawled under the quilt and pinched her waist. Yu Lily was caught off guard and exclaimed. Then she burst into laughter. "What are you doing? A single dog is not angry. It's jealous. You're already an ex, but you still can't forget him. Love your sister." Yi Qianshan quickly retracted her hand and hugged Yu Lily's shoulder from behind. "But to be honest, I can tell that your ex-boyfriend really wants to get back together with you. You didn't see the look on his face just now. He wanted to tie you up. How could I not know?" Hearing Yi Qianshan's words, Yu Lily quietly smiled. "But if he treats you like that before, if he really wants to get back together with you, don't agree too quickly. Don't show that you can't have him." Hearing that, Yu Lily was embarrassed. With her back facing Yi Qianshan, she didn't dare look back and asked, "Why?" "What? You are a comic book writer yourself. Shouldn't you be very clear about this kind of story? Men are all the same. They don't cherish things that are too easy to get. You must keep him hanging. Don't let him think that you are cheap, and don't let him think that you are only suitable for him. If you do that, your position in the future will not be so stable." Yu Lily felt a little speechless at Yi Qianshan's words. But what made her even more speechless was that she actually felt that it was very reasonable. "Then what should I do?" She was already. Yi Qianshan was completely unaware and said, "In fact, people are all the same. They all have bad habits. Especially men. Men like Ming, who are rich, powerful, and handsome, all have one thing in common. That is, they are cheap. The more I can't get it, the more I want it. This feeling, at first, is dominated by desire, but it will slowly change. If I can't get it, it will become possessiveness, and if I can't get it, it will become a desire to conquer." As Yi Qianshan spoke, she stretched out her hand and slowly clenched it into a fist in front of Yu Lily. After the desire to conquer, it will slowly become a habit. When you get it again, there will be a kind of, it's not easy to come by, so I must cherish it. Do you understand? Yu Lily was stunned and turned to look at Yi Qianshan. She looked at her in surprise and applauded in admiration. Are people who have never been in love so imaginative? It's really great. Chapter 12:29. When Yu Lily heard that, she nodded her head cooperatively and gently comforted her. "Yes, you're right. Shall we go to bed first?" Yi Qianshan was even more annoyed when she heard that. She kicked her and shouted, "Get lost." Yu Lily's leg hurt from the kick. She blinked her eyes aggrievedly and quickly hugged her. "Sister, you are my sister. Don't be angry, okay?" Yi Qianshan was only a little displeased. She wasn't angry. When he heard Yu Lily's cowardly response, he rolled his eyes at her and flipped the blanket over. "Go to sleep." "Okay." Yu Lily couldn't have asked for more. She covered herself with the blanket and immediately turned around. However, even though he was sleepy, he couldn't fall asleep. His mind was filled with what Yi Qianshan had just said. Men's deep-rooted bad habits. They have one thing in common: they are despicable. The more I can't get it, the more I want it. TSK. Although Yi Qianshan didn't have any actual combat experience, She had to admit that the experience she had gleaned from the gossip was King reasonable. Yi Qianqian knew that she wasn't asleep, so she ignored her and closed her eyes to sleep. Suddenly the phone that was charging on the bedside table rang. Then came the second, third and fourth sound. Yu Lily covered her head and pushed Yi Qianqian. Cell phone. Yi Qianqian reluctantly crawled out from under the covers and picked up her cell phone. Just by looking at it, he straightened up and rolled on the ground like a carp. Yu Lily was shocked by Yi Qianqian's reaction. She raised her hand and slapped her across the face. What are you doing? Yi Qianqian wasn't in the mood to argue with Yu Lily. She read the message again and again, and her heart could no longer calm down. When Yu Lily saw her serious expression, she climbed up and asked, "What's wrong?" "My sister, Yu?" The little actor who had just risen to fame. Yi Qianqian didn't look too good. She looked at Yu Lily with a grave expression and said, "You're injured." Yu Lily was also shocked. She took the phone from Yi Qianqian. It was Yi Qianqian's father. "Daddy? Qianqian, where are you now? Yo-Yo got hurt at work. It seems pretty serious. Daddy, I want to see her. Come with me." Below was a piece of news sent by Yi Qianqian's father. The headline was striking frowny face that was close. Yi Yu fell from a wire during filming and was sent to the emergency room in the middle of the night. Looking at the time, it was tonight. He clicked on it and saw what had happened at 9 o'clock in the evening. There was also a picture in the news. The red bloodstain looked shocking. Yi Qianqian had already gotten up to change her clothes. She said, "I'm going back now. My father must be very anxious. I have to go back with him to see my sister." "Are you crazy? It's already past 11 o'clock. Where would you find a car to take you back? Furthermore, Yi Yu is filming in the studio. She must be sent to a nearby hospital. Even if you go there now, you won't make it in time." Yi Qianqian froze when she heard that. Yu Lily took the opportunity to calm her down and said, "The most important thing for you now is to let your father settle down. Tomorrow morning you'll take the plane to H City where she lives." Yi Qianqian thought about it and nodded. She picked up the phone and called her father. Yi Yu's incident had caused quite a stir in the industry. For a moment there was a lot of discussion and it also became a little popular on Weibo. Chapter 1230. Kingstown, Imperial Pavilion Villa Complex. In the huge villa, only the master bedroom was dimly lit. The warm yellow light elongated the tall figure. In the room, the distinct lines of his muscles were outlined by the black satin nightgown. Hearing the urgent voice on the other end of the phone, the man slowly lit a cigarette. He didn't smoke it. He just held it between his fingers and allowed the white smoke to rise. "GM Lee, what should we do? This movie is very important. The second female lead has a lot of scenes. If Yi Yu can't do it, we'll have to replace her. This person was personally sent in by this person. If they were to replace him, wouldn't it be a loss of face for this person? But if he didn't replace her, how were they going to continue filming? Yi Yu's injury wasn't looking good. It would probably take at least 3 to 5 months to recover. Fortunately, it hadn't hurt her face. Otherwise, the girl's acting career would be worrying." Li Jinan was silent for a moment. His brows furrowed slightly. He tapped his fingers on the table and asked slowly, "Have you informed her family?" The person in charge hadn't expected that Li Jinan's first concern would be this. After thinking for a moment, he said, "I've informed them. I think her husband and parents have been informed." "Got it. Keep an eye on her and try your best to satisfy her needs." "Yes. Yes, but the director of this movie is asking for your opinion. Should we replace her or..." "Replace who?" "There's a pretty good actress in our company recently. She's as famous as Yi Yu. She has already gone to the director for an interview. She can replace Yi Yu's position." It was obvious that they had already prepared everything and were just waiting for his help. Li Jinan suddenly chuckled. He flicked the ash from his cigarette and said, "Replace her." "Yes." The person in charge finally breathed a sigh of relief. "I'll make the arrangements then. Goodbye, Jim Lee." Li Jinan couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense. He hung up the phone and tossed it onto the bed. With the cigarette between his fingers, he lay down on the bed. Yi Yu is injured. Li Jinan reached out and massaged his temples. Even he didn't know what he was feeling. She was the first woman. The only woman. But she was already married. The reason Li Jinan hadn't had any direct contact with her recently was to avoid arousing suspicion. However, the care he gave her behind the scenes was also a source of gossip. Many people were guessing whether the CEO of NC was interested in this small celebrity. Gradually the rumor started to spread. Even Qin Shuhua came to ask him if he had anything to do with the girl. It wasn't easy for him to get away with it, and now something like this happened. If he specially went to H City to see her, it would definitely cause trouble again. With a heavy sigh, Li Jinnan's temples throbbed. Yi Yuyu's injuries weren't light, but they weren't serious either. He had a concussion from the fall and was still in a coma. His leg bone was slightly fractured, and there were many abrasions on his body. It looked like he was covered in blood, but fortunately it was not serious. Yi Qianshan had caught the earliest flight over. When she heard that Yi Yuyu was well, she immediately reported it to her father. Unexpectedly, Yi Qianshan bumped into a familiar face as soon as she returned from her phone call. Chapter 1231. When Yi Qianshan saw the expression on Shenluo An's face, the anxiety and anger that had been suppressed in her heart for a long time suddenly erupted. He quickly walked up to them in an aggressive manner. When the young doctor saw the state Yi Qianshan was in, he felt his hair stand on end. When Shenluo An turned to look at Yi Qianshan, he saw that her face bore some resemblance to Yi Yuyu's. He roughly knew who she was. Shenluo An. Yi Qianshan's voice was not loud, but it sounded a little fierce. Shenluo An stood there with his hands in his pockets. He looked at Yi Qianshan and raised his eyebrows. "You're Yi Yuyu's older sister, aren't you? The capital is only 2 hours' drive from H City. Yuyu has been in a coma since last night. As her husband, why did you only arrive now?" And with that expression, people who didn't know better would think that he was here to collect a debt. The more Yi Qianshan thought about it, the more she felt that it was not worth it. This guy is really annoying. Fortunately, Yi Yuyu was deeply in love with him. She had always dreamed of marrying him since she was young. She didn't expect this guy's true colors to be so despicable that he would even lay his hands on his own sister. He was simply inhumane. When Shenluo An heard Yi Qianshan's words, his face was cold and expressionless. He said, "Aren't I here now?" "You." Yi Qianshan suddenly felt infuriated. Just as Yi Qianshan was about to say something, Shenluo An suddenly walked around her in the direction of the ward. He raised his voice and said, "I'm here, but I'm still unconscious. You should save it. You've been schemed against by Yi Yuyu since you were young. How can you pretend to be a good sister? What's the meaning of this?" Yi Qianshan shouted at Shenque An's back. However, Shenluo An had already entered the intensive care unit. Yi Qianshan stomped her foot and followed him in. Yi Yuyu wasn't particularly popular yet. She didn't have an assistant of her own, and her manager was busy with all sorts of public relations. She had no time for that. Did Yi Yuyu lie there alone the entire night? When Yi Qianshan thought of that, she felt even more indignant for her friend. Poor girl. She's not a bad person. Why doesn't anyone care about her? It was all Shenluo An's fault. Yi Qianshan was even more annoyed. When she walked in, she saw him looking down at her from above. Yi Yuyu, who was lying on the bed, had already opened her eyes. Seeing this, Yi Qianshan was overjoyed. She immediately turned around and ran out, shouting, "Doctor, the patient is awake." However, Shenluo An remained standing. He had no intention of notifying the medical staff. Yi Qianshan looked at the man in front. Shenluo An looked as if he was being torn. "You." Yi of the man's eyes. Shen's face Shen and said, "Shen, Shen." The man in front of her was expressionless. Other than the coldness in his eyes, there was nothing else. "I said," Yi said, "I Shen was, Shen An? Shenluo or?" Shenluo An stepped forward and raised his eyebrows slightly. "I thought I'd see your corpse when I came here. I didn't expect that to be the case." Yi Shen felt. Shen felt, Qian was. The sound of the heartbeat machine beating rapidly was a far cry from the previous calmness. Chapter 1232. Yi Yuyu's eyes turned red and tears began to flow. Looking at the man in front of her, Yi Yuyu's heart, which had finally calmed down, began to ache again. Shenluo An. Yi Yuyu's voice wasn't loud and it sounded weak. As she spoke, her head hurt uncontrollably. It was as if the vibration of her vocal cords was stirred. Yi Yuyu couldn't help but squint her eyes. She felt as if she was going to faint again. "Huh?" Shenluo An's face was full of surprise. He smiled warmly, but his eyes were cold. "Now you don't even call me Brother Luo An? You can't pretend anymore?" Yi Yuyu's head was buzzing. She stared at Shenluo An and tears slipped from the corner of her eyes. The sound of footsteps could be heard from outside. Soon a doctor and nurse came in. Yi Chanshan followed closely behind and looked at Yi Yuyu. Yi Yuyu's eyes seemed to be nailed to Shen Luoan. She couldn't look away. Shen Luoan's eyelids were gently closed, and an inscrutable smile hung on his lips. He put his hands in his trouser pockets and turned to walk out. The abnormal heartbeat on the heartbeat monitor revealed her mood swings. Yi Chanshan watched Shen Luoan walk out and felt a little regretful. If I had known, I wouldn't have let him in. Seeing Shen Luoan walk out, Yi Chanshan followed him. Shen Luoan heard the footsteps behind him and suddenly stopped. With his back turned, he said, "Since you are Yi Yuyu's sister, I'll have to trouble you for the next few days. I still have things to do. I'll pay the hospital fees until she's discharged." In other words, he doesn't intend to stay here to take care of Yi Yuyu? Yi Chanshan's eyes widened and she flew into a rage. "She's your wife. Where are you going to fool around? What could be more important than your wife's life?" What? Shen Luoan seemed to have heard a joke. He chuckled and turned to look at Yi Chanshan. He raised his eyebrows slightly. "Maybe she treats me as her husband, but I've never treated her as my wife." Yi Chanshan's lungs were about to explode. She had never seen such an abominable man. How could such a guy be worthy of such a good woman as Yi Yuyu? "You scum. Yuyu has liked you since you were a child, and this is how you repay her? If you don't like her, why did you marry her in the first place? Aren't you being cheap?" Yi Chanshan's words were sharp. Even the volume of his voice was not small, considering that this was a hospital. When Shen Luoan heard this, he turned around slightly and glanced at Yi Chanshan. Especially when he saw Yi Chanshan's furious expression, he smiled warmly like a spring breeze, but the words that came out of his mouth were hard to tell if he was praising or criticizing her. They really are sisters. Their personalities are similar to when she was young. When Shen Luoan said this, an indescribable emotion flashed across his eyes. It seemed to be nostalgia and tenderness. But soon he turned around and walked forward. "She wanted me to marry her, so I married her. I owe her that." The current Yi Yuyu was much more hypocritical than her. She was becoming more and more of a hypocrite. Chapter 1233. Did I not take responsibility? Shen Luoan stopped in his tracks and looked at Yi Chanshan with a faint smile. Yi Chanshan became even more furious. She roared, "What kind of responsibility is this? Yi Yuyu is lying inside. I wasn't the one who asked her to lie in there. What's the point of getting angry at me?" Shen Luoan didn't look guilty at all. He raised his eyebrows and asked confidently. The expression on Shen Luoan's face became more and more strange when he felt the gazes from all around him. It was a smile that was not a smile. It seemed sinister and cold. It didn't feel like he was facing his wife at all. In fact, it didn't feel like he was facing a friend. Instead, it felt like he was facing an extremely disgusting person, a person that he hated the most. "I will pay for the medical fees. If you don't want to take care of me, I can hire a caregiver. Please just tell me." For a moment, Yi Chanshan didn't know what to say. To think that a husband would have such an attitude when facing his heavily injured wife. When Shen Luoan saw that she had nothing else to say, he turned around and quickly left with light footsteps. His figure was elegant and his figure was tall. Just looking at his back was enough to make people unable to come back to their senses. But why was it like this? The man you loved shouldn't be like this. Yi Chanshan was a little absent-minded. She turned around and returned to the ward. After a series of examinations, the doctors and nurses reminded Yi Chanshan of a few things to take note of and quickly left. Yi Yuyu fell asleep again. Her eyes were watery and her face was pale. Yi Chanshan's heart ached even more. Suddenly the cell phone in her pocket rang. Yi Chanshan was shocked. She quickly grabbed her phone and walked out. It was Shenjilia. When Yi Chanshan saw Shenjilia, she couldn't help but feel angry. Shen Luoan and Shenjilia were brothers. Yi Chanshan picked up the phone in a huff and snapped, "What is it?" Shenjilia was baffled by the roar. He was stunned for a moment before he asked, "How is my sister-in-law now? Is it serious?" When Yi Chanshan heard that, she laughed angrily. "So, you still know that she's your sister-in-law? Do you know what your sister-in-law has just gone through? Do you know what your good brother told me? Why is there such a big gap between the Shen family? Tell me. I think you're still a decent person, but why is your brother like this? Bah, scum. Scum. Bastard. Beast. Scumbag." The more Yi Chanshan scolded him, the more fervent she became. In the end, she was so angry that she stomped her foot and yelled, "I'm so angry." Shenjilia was baffled by the scolding, but at the same time he found Yi Qianshan inexplicably adorable. He couldn't help but burst out laughing. Unexpectedly, it made Yi Qianshan even more displeased. "What are you laughing at, you beast? You're not a good thing either. Hey hey hey. It's one thing for you to scold my brother, but what you're doing is implicating the innocent." "What did I do? You've wronged me," Shinjilia shouted. "What happened? How is my sister-in-law doing?" Yi Qianshan angrily recounted everything that Yi Yuyu had said to her, as well as Shinluo An's attitude toward her. The more she spoke, the angrier she became. She was on the verge of scratching the wall. When Shinjilia heard that, he coughed lightly and said, "My brother didn't particularly like my sister-in-law to begin with, so, therefore he was not surprised at all that she would say such a thing." Chapter 1234. What she said, Shinluo An was his brother. Shinjilia felt that she was scolding him when he heard her scolding him so righteously. However, Shinjilia couldn't say a word. After all, Shinluo An didn't treat Yi Yuyu very well. Yes. Don't be angry. How is she now?" Shinjilia quickly changed the topic to Yi Yuyu. After they chatted for a while, Shinjilia hung up the phone. Yu Lily clearly saw Shinjilia breathe a sigh of relief when he hung up the phone. The table was full of dishes and old Mrs. Shin ate them with relish. Now the four of them were sitting at a small round table, facing each other. Yu Lily and old Mrs. Shin sat on one side, and Ming and Shinjilia sat on the other. Old Mrs. Shin was eating when she noticed that Shinjilia had hung up the phone. She asked, "How is the girl now?" "She seems to have a concussion and her hand is fractured, but it's not particularly serious. She should be discharged in a few days." "How could it be so serious? Isn't she a big star? Isn't she just filming all day? Why is she in such danger?" "Grandma, it's not that simple. Don't those big stars always fly around the mountain? They all need to hang a wire. This time, sister-in-law accidentally fell from the wire, and that's why she was injured." Shinjilia put food in the old lady's bowl and said, "Nothing is easy." Old Mrs. Shin ate and asked, "Where is she? Did your brother go?" "Yes. He paid the medical fees and left." Shinjilia also heard it from Yi Qianshan. He felt a little sympathy for Yi Yuyu. When old Mrs. Shin heard this, she sighed and said, "What a sin." "Isn't it a sin? Yi Yuyu was injured, but Shinluo and only paid the medical fees and left. Moreover, the capital was only a 2-hour drive from H City, but he waited until noon the next day." Yu Lily didn't know about their family affairs, so she didn't interrupt. She put some food in Ming's bowl and lowered her head to eat in silence. Shinjilia clearly saw Yu Lily's actions, and his eyes were a little sad. This woman still couldn't let go of Ming, right? No matter how Ming treated her, there was only one man in her heart. Shinjilia felt a little frustrated. He also picked up a few chopsticks and put them in Ming's bowl. He said, "Eat more. Don't be picky. I'll take you back to Kingstown after eating." Ming didn't say anything. He pretended not to notice Shinjilia's deliberate behavior. He picked up his chopsticks and continued eating. "Is your hand better?" Yu Lily asked. Ming's hand, which was holding the chopsticks, paused for a moment. He quickly put down the chopsticks, spread out his palm and said, "It hurts. I think I have a blister." When Yu Lily looked over, Shinjilia felt displeased. He reached out and slapped Ming's hand away. "Eat your food. You're a big man, what's the point of being sentimental? It's fine as long as you can use it." Ming curled his lips and said, "You're jealous." "Jealous my ass. Let's eat." Shinjilia shoved his chopsticks into Ming's hands. He was extremely unhappy. Chapter 1235. Ming had already expected this. Shinjilia couldn't wait to send him away. When he heard this, Ming wasn't surprised at all. Ming calmly sat where he was and said, "Actually, someone has already come to pick me up. You can ask Yu Ruoxin to contact Uncle Wen. Since they're here to pick you up, why would they contact Lily? Can't you contact them yourself?" Shinjilia clearly didn't believe him. "I don't remember his number. I don't have a phone," Ming said matter-of-factly. When Shinjilia heard that, he looked at Ming with a faint smile. He picked up his phone and sent a text to Yu Lily right in front of Ming. Ming said he wanted to contact Uncle Wen. "Send me Uncle Wen's phone number." When Yu Lily saw that, she didn't suspect anything and immediately sent the number over. When Ming saw this, he had a new understanding of this. This fellow was so cunning. After Shinjilia called Wen Fenglin, he handed the phone to Ming. Ming took it and called out, "Uncle Wen." Xiao, how are you getting along with Lily? It's pretty good, but Uncle Wen, where are you now? I'll let you Lily take me to you and then we'll go back to Kingstown together. Oh, that's good. When Feng Lin gave them the address. It was at the Art Association in N City. After hanging up the phone, Ming could clearly sense Shenjilia's displeasure. But he still pretended not to know and said, call you Lily and ask her to take me there. I'll take you there. My grandmother likes Lily very much. Let them play for a while longer. Yes, I can see that your grandmother is planning to change her surname from Yu to Shen, right? Take her in as an adopted granddaughter or something. Of course not. Even if you change your surname, it will be recorded in my household register. The meaning of these words couldn't be any clearer. However, when Ming heard that, he laughed and said, it should be noon now, right? Are you sleepwalking? Shenjilia's eyes turned cold. Just wait and see. Lily won't choose you again. Sooner or later I'll deal with her. Can you handle it? Ming raised his eyebrows. His eyes were unfocused as he looked ahead, but his smile was bright. Shenjilia decided to ignore him. He stood up and left. She had no intention of taking Ming with her. Ming pretended not to know and sat in the same place, listening to the movements around him. Just wait, you Lily will be back. Shenjilia was digging his own grave by leaving a blind man, like him there. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, Shenjilia returned with an angry look on his face and demanded, why didn't you follow me? When did you leave? When Shenjilia heard this rhetorical question, he didn't know what to say. The sound of light footsteps came from behind him. It was very familiar. Shenjilia turned around. Was you Lily? When she saw Shenjilia, she said, Grandma is alone in the room. You go and keep her company. I'll take him to Uncle Wen. Shenjilia nodded and said, yes, Grandma is alone in the room. So, they still had to be alone? How could this be? Shenjilia quickly said, I'll go with you. You stay here with Grandma. I'll bring him to the Art Association to find Uncle Wen. I'll be back soon. Yu Lily looked at Shenjilia and said, Grandma is getting on in years, so it's better that she doesn't follow us around. I just told Grandma that I would bring a cake back. You can bring a piece back. I'm leaving now. Chapter 1236. When Shenjilia saw that, he felt even more depressed. He stepped forward to stop Yu Lily and said, wait a minute. Remember to give me a call if anything happens. Okay. Yu Lily smiled. She held Ming's hand and walked forward. She patted Shenjilia on the shoulder and said, nothing will happen. If there's anything I can't handle, I'll give you a call immediately. Okay, but if this guy bullies you, don't hold back. Beat him up. Yes, yes, yes. Yu Lily held Ming's hand and walked forward. She turned her head and waved at Shenjilia. After they left the hotel, Yu Lily flagged down a taxi. She shoved Ming in and got in herself. Shenjilia was still watching from behind. Yu Lily waved until he was out of sight. She then retracted her hand. Ming pulled her over and fell on top of her. You're still waving. Even if I wasn't blind, I'd be blinded. Yu Lily pushed him away in disgust and said, you're so heavy. Get lost. Is it heavy? Ming immediately straightened up and pulled her over. Then you can lean on me. Yu Lily was still annoyed and asked, after you go look for Uncle Wen, are you going back to Kingstown? No, Uncle Wen still has things to do at the Art Association. They're old friends who haven't seen each other in decades. They must have a lot to talk about. We'll just find a comfortable hotel nearby to stay. Let's go together. That's not a good idea. I just told Shenjilia that I'm going back. Tell him that you're not going back. That won't do. Won't they know that we're back together again? It's good that you're back together. It's not the first time we've gotten back together. What's there to be afraid of? Ming appeared very calm. He held her with one arm. That guy is still daydreaming. It's best that you clear things up with him. If he thinks he has a chance and pesters you, you'll know that you're in trouble. No way. Shenjilia is not stupid. Yu Lily pinched his nose. But when are you going to be honest? Everyone thinks that you're not over yet. What will you do when they find out? Once my mother is settled, everything will be fine. Ming hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. I want you to be a legitimate member of our family. I want my mother to have nothing to say. Yu Lily touched her face and saw the driver's ambiguous gaze. She blushed and pushed Ming. There's someone else here. Ming was even more presumptuous. He nibbled on her face and said, Uncle Driver is an experienced man. He's already used to it. Yu Lily blushed and pushed him away with both hands and feet. Oming laughed and stopped teasing her. He let go of her and said, "Does Shinjilia's grandmother like you very much?" "It seems so. I don't know why, but I've unwittingly become friends with her." Yu Lily was in a passive position when it came to this friendship that spanned generations. "Why are you suddenly asking about this?" "I was thinking, since she likes you so much, you can ask her for help." "What?" Oming did not answer. He turned to look at Yu Lily and said, "I sent someone to investigate your background. After nearly half a year, I finally found some clues." Yu Lily was stunned. "What clues?" Chapter 1237. Hearing that, Yu Lily held her breath and looked at Ming in disbelief. "You found her?" 25 years ago, there were no closed roads everywhere near the orphanage. It was very difficult to find an abandoned baby in a situation where no one saw it. It went without saying how difficult it was. But Ming could find her. "Yes, I found her." Ming reached out and gently touched her cheek. "She's doing well." "Is it the woman who gave birth to me?" In other words, it was her mother. Was it her mother? The word mother was too far away from Yu Lily. It was too far away. She had never said that word since she was a child. She thought that such a person should have died long ago. She didn't expect that Ming would find her. Ming could clearly sense Yu Lily's emotional turmoil. He gently stroked her head and said, "Yes, but she's not your mother." "How could it be? Since she gave birth to me, who else could she be but my mother?" Yu Lily was a little emotional and shouted. "Shoo." Ming pointed to the driver in front and said, "Don't get excited. Listen to me slowly." "Go ahead." Although Yu Lily said that, she was not calm at all. She held Ming's hand tightly with both of her hands, which undoubtedly revealed her nervousness. "She is the woman who gave birth to you, but she is not your biological mother. You have no blood relationship with her at all." "What do you mean?" Yu Lily felt a little difficult to digest. "How could it be? She is a surrogate mother. Back then she helped someone else give birth to you. That is to say, she helped your biological mother give birth to you and she just lent your mother a belly." "Surrogate mother? Isn't that illegal?" "At that time it was not illegal." Ming tapped her forehead. "The woman refused to tell you the specific situation. She wanted you to see her in person." "She wants me to see her in person? Where is she now?" "In F County. She's the mother of 2 children now. They're both older than you. You're her last child. After you were born, your biological mother didn't come to look for you. With her living conditions, it was impossible for her to raise a child who was less than a month old." Ming stroked her hair and continued, "Back then the cold wave was very strong and F County was just a small village. There were originally 3 children but one froze to death." "Was that why he had abandoned her?" "The year she was born, the cold wave had indeed frightened many people. It was a rare snowy day in 100 years, yet she managed to survive." "What about my biological parents? Where are they?" Yu Lily couldn't tell what she was feeling. At this moment she was sad and even looking forward to it. What were they expecting? All these years, her biological parents had never appeared, nor had they raised her for a day, nor had they fed her a mouthful of milk. Now that she had survived all by herself, did it matter whether they appeared or not? And now she was actually looking forward to them. Chapter 1238. I don't know. All I know is that you're not that woman's child. I used your hair to do a DNA test and it's confirmed that you're not. Yu Lily was a little disappointed, but she knew the implications and didn't say another word. "Let's go take a look together after we're done with my mother." Yu Lily nodded her head. She still had many thoughts about her biological parents. The taxi stopped very quickly. Yu Lily paid the fare and got out of the car. She walked shoulder to shoulder with Ming to the place when Fenglin had mentioned. The Art Association. Any artist would want to enter a place to record their name. Yu Lily was no exception. Looking at the grand entrance, Yu Lily's heart was filled with longing. Everyone wanted to come to a good place. She called when Fenglin. He was chatting and drinking tea inside. When he received the call, he immediately came out and led the 2 of them inside. When they entered, they realized that there were many people inside. Yu Lily didn't like such occasions, but Ming seemed to know many people there. As soon as he entered, many people recognized him and shouted, "Lil, oh? It's really Xiao. What happened to your hand? What happened to your eyes?" Ming was still pretending to be blind. After all, the elders in front of him were old friends with Qiao Ziqing and Huijin. The circle was only so big. If word got out, he couldn't continue pretending in front of Qiao Ziqing. The group of elders greeted Ming's colleagues and didn't forget to tease Yu Lili. Yu Lili was afraid that Ming would give himself away, so she quickly found an excuse and said that she wanted to leave. Wait a minute. A young voice called out to Ming and Yu Lili. Since you're here, let's sit together. My father isn't here yet. She turned around and saw a young man in his early 20s. His features weren't outstanding, but he had a clean demeanor. When Fenglin quickly stepped forward to smooth things over. Xiao isn't feeling well. He should be taking a break now. Yu Lili's handling of such an occasion was a little awkward. It was obvious that she wasn't used to such occasions. When Fenglin could tell at a glance. He couldn't allow her to stay any longer. However, Zhenli didn't want to let them off. He looked at Yu Lili and said, I think this lady looks familiar. I wonder if we've met before? When Yu Lili heard that, she felt a little embarrassed. When Ming heard that, his face darkened. He pulled Yu Lili aside and said, You haven't seen her, have you? I've never brought her here. Ming's hostility was so obvious that Zhenli's face immediately became hot. He said, I didn't mean that. I really felt that she looked a little familiar. I wasn't trying to hit on her. Yu Lili also felt that Ming's reaction was too much. She pulled him back and reached out to pat him. In a low voice she said, Speak properly. This was the place that Uncle Wen had brought them to. What if they embarrassed Uncle Wen? Yu Lili looked at Zhenli with a smile and said, Perhaps you've seen the news some time ago. My relationship with Ming was quite a hit recently. You must have seen my photo. Zhenli nodded. Was that so? However, Zhenli felt that it shouldn't be so simple. But he just couldn't remember where he had seen it before. Chapter 1239. That should be the case. Yu Lili smiled and pressed Ming's hand down. I'll take Ming to rest first. Okay. Zhenli nodded his head and watched them leave. After sending Yu Lili and Ming off, Zhenli couldn't sit still any longer. After saying goodbye to Wen Fenglin, he quickly drove back home. Jin Xianlang had just arrived home. He had intended to take a good rest and leave everything to his son. He hadn't expected Zhenli to return home as well. When he sensed his son's return, Zhen Xianlang was clearly unhappy. In a stern voice he asked, Why are you back? Did you leave the people from the art association behind? I asked Uncle Wen to help me take a look, Ming said. Dad, can you show me the photo you showed me before? What photo? It's the photo of your wife before you married my mother. After Yu Lili let Ming out, Ming quickly grabbed her hand. His footsteps were quick and he looked unhappy. Wait a minute. Why are you walking so fast? Yu Lili's steps were a little shaky. She couldn't keep up. Uncle Wen is still there. Did you talk to him? No. Ming's face was stern. He turned to look at Yu Lili and said, That man was obviously hitting on you and you smiled at him. That's Uncle Wen's nephew and he didn't mean any harm. He just wanted to greet me. He doesn't look like those hooligans outside. There's such a big art association there and my boyfriend is there too. He couldn't have meant it that way. Who said that? Ming's face was cold. I think he thought I couldn't see, so he wanted to develop a relationship with you. As he said that, he pointed at Yu Lili's head and gritted his teeth. Why don't you use your brain to think about what's going on? That man obviously had ill intentions toward you. You're thinking too much. I know my own looks. It's impossible that any random man would be interested in me. Ming almost couldn't help but curse, but he held it in and said, In any case, if you see that man in the future, you have to stay away from him. Don't smile at him and don't get close to him. Do you hear me? Yes. Yu Lili didn't know what to do with him. What are we going to do now? What time is it? 3 o'clock. Let's go boating, Ming said with a smile. Rowing? Yu Lili looked at his hand. Are you sure? Well, you row, I'll sit. Not going. Let's go. Not going. Let's go. Yu Lili bought some snacks and went to buy a ticket. She led Ming onto the boat and started rowing with the oars. Ming, on the other hand, was stepping on the boat. The two of them sat face to face. Ming was not happy. He waved at her and said, Come here. No, we can't. The boat will tip over. I won't. Yes. I said I won't, so I won't. Yu Lili rolled her eyes at him. If I go over, we'll capsize and die together. Shall I sit over there? As he spoke, he was about to move. Yu Lili jumped in fright and shouted, Sit down. Don't move. Ming stopped what he was doing. He pursed his lips and waved at her. Come here. You don't have to sit here. Chapter 1240. Yu Lily blinked her eyes and subconsciously looked around. There were several small boats nearby. Some of them were shared by their best friends while others were couples like them. There were also families of 3 that came together. Perhaps they saw it and many people looked over. Yu Lily's face became hotter and hotter. She wanted to push him away but Ming held her face and sucked harder. Let go. Yu Lily slapped him in embarrassment. Ming let go of her hand and continued to paddle the boat as if nothing had happened. Yu Lily felt the stares from all directions and her face became redder. She lowered her head and didn't dare to raise it. Ming was very calm and said, Look, the 2 ducks behind you are so cute. Yu Lily turned her head and saw 2 little guys swimming together. They had green necks and white feathers. What ducks? Those are mandarin ducks. Oh, so those are mandarin ducks. Ming smiled. That's amazing. For some reason Yu Lily felt that his words had a deeper meaning. After glaring at him, she turned her face away and rowed the boat, determined not to look at him. When she turned her head, she inadvertently saw a couple sitting together. The woman was sitting on the man's lap, hugging each other. They were very close and they were smiling sweetly and brightly. But then the 2 of them were hugging and kissing, and the man's hand was still on the woman's chest. Yu Lily blushed. The moral degeneration of the world was getting worse day by day. These 2 people were too bold. But she had to admit that such a handsome man and beautiful woman were very pleasing to the eye. Unknowingly Yu Lily found Ming leaning over and asked, What are you looking at? Yu Lily turned her head and was kissed on the cheek by Ming. Yu Lily shrank her neck and shook her head, but she couldn't help looking in that direction. The 2 of them were no longer kissing but the hand was still on her chest. TSK, you're not being honest. Ming leaned over and kissed her lips. Let's go ashore? So soon. Yu Lily looked at the time. We've been here for less than half an hour. Well, I don't think rowing is fun. Let's go for a walk. A walk. Yu Lily felt a little relieved. This guy hated walking the most. In his words, such a boring activity was a waste of life. Instead of walking, it was better to work. Now, because he was injured, because he was blind, he could justifiably rest and stop working. Yu Lily smiled and nodded. Let's go. When they reached the shore, Yu Lily held Ming's hand and walked around the park. It was a unique building with a Minnan style. It was antique and the surrounding greenery was done very well. Most importantly, there were many couples walking around. Not long after the new year, many young couples hadn't started school yet. Of course, the park had become the first choice for dating. Along the way there were all kinds of couples. Some were in love, some were laughing, and some were fooling around. It was very lively. Yu Lily was a little envious and looked at those couples. Ming held her in his arms with one hand. He lowered his head and whispered, What's with that expression? He looked so envious. Chapter 1241. Yu Lily turned her head and looked at him. Especially when she saw his slightly evil features, she couldn't help but raise the corner of her mouth. She said with some disgust, What's so good about you? They are better looking. Really? Ming narrowed his eyes. In his deep peach blossom eyes, evil began to overflow unscrupulously. Maybe others say the same. Come on, let's do it for others to see. As he said that, his hand touched Yu Lily's head as if he was going to kiss her. Yu Lily's lips curled into a smile. She took a step back and said, Go away. Are you trying to be a hooligan in broad daylight? Ming didn't realize that he was being despised. He raised his eyebrows and took a step forward. That's not the way to be a hooligan. Come on, let me teach you. Go away. Yu Lily smiled and stepped back, but Ming was obviously a little faster. He took a step forward, grabbed her with one hand and bent over to hold her in his arms. Yu Lily turned her head and saw Ming looking at her gently. A pair of peach blossom eyes were like a gurgling spring, sparkling, and soft like a sea of flowers. When Yu Lily saw such a pair of eyes, she suddenly felt very lucky. Fortunately, he can see. Such a pair of beautiful eyes, such a pair of eyes that make people's hearts beat. If it was really like a few days ago, it would be such a pity. When he looked at her with such a pair of eyes, Yu Lily could not help but feel the love coming from him all the time. In fact, sometimes, he was just a little bit of a mouth. Yu Lily turned her head and leaned forward, standing on her tiptoes to get close to his lips. Ming thought she was going to kiss him, so he leaned forward. Unexpectedly, Yu Lily had moved closer, but the moment she opened her mouth, she bit down hard on his lip. Oming frowned. Just as he was about to recover, Yu Lily bit him again. Why did you bite me? Oming felt inexplicable. He raised his eyebrows slightly and lowered his head with a low laugh. Is it because of Xian Xing's flirting method? No. Yu Lily shook her head and looked at him with a smile. It's just because you have a dirty mouth. Oming was speechless. Before he could say anything, Yu Lily held his face in her hands and kissed him on the lips. The gloominess of being mocked and scolded disappeared without a trace. Yu Lily kissed him again and licked his lips gently with her tongue. He raised his hand to touch her head. He moved his lips forward and acted as if he wanted more. However, more and more people were looking at them. Yu Lily immediately pushed him away and whispered, "You're acting like a hooligan." When Oming heard that, he was slightly stunned. But soon he laughed softly. Flirting and not being satisfied, wasn't this the same as acting like a rogue? Seeing Yu Lily running away with a smile, Oming immediately chased after her. Stop right there. Yu Lily ran even faster. She turned around and waved at Oming. Come on, let's go eat. Oming was a little puzzled, but when he saw her bright and beautiful smile, his mood naturally soared. His eyes turned into crescents as he chased after Yu Lily. Wait for me. Why are you so slow when you're so tall? Oming was puzzled. Yu Lily couldn't do anything else, but she could run faster than anyone else. Your legs are so long. Why are you so slow? Chapter 1242. Oming's voice wasn't soft. There were many people walking around them. When they heard Oming's words, those who knew what was going on looked at them suspiciously. Yu Lily's face heated up. She quickly covered it and found a corner to hide. I'm going to die. How shameless of him to say something like that in front of so many people. Fortunately, the gazes around them only lingered for a moment before quickly turning away. Oming walked up to her and held her hand proudly as he asked, Didn't you say we were going out for dinner? What are we going to eat? What can you eat? Your hand is already like this. You should eat something high in protein. Seafood? Okay. She looked at the time. It was only evening. Near the park there was no lack of restaurants. It was also close to the seafood market, so there were many places to eat seafood. The two of them walked slowly, shoulder to shoulder. After walking for about 10 minutes, they arrived at a seafood restaurant. They booked a private room. Just as they were about to order, Yu Lily received a call from Wen Fenglin. Uncle Wen. Yu Lily held out her cell phone for him to see. She answered the call and called out, Uncle Wen. Hey Lily, where did you and Oming go? We're preparing to eat. Have you eaten? Oh, I see. I was going to call you out to eat together. Where are you now? Yu Lily quickly gave him the name of the restaurant. Unexpectedly, Wen Fenglin seemed surprised and said, What a coincidence. We're here too. Why don't you come over and join us? Which room are you in? When Yu Lily heard that, she knew something was amiss. She turned her head to look at Oming and said, Uncle Wen is here too. He asked us to join him for dinner? Oming furrowed his brows and shook his head gently at him. If Wen Fenglin had been alone, he wouldn't have had any objections. But it was obvious that Uncle Wen wasn't alone. With such a large group of people together, it was inevitable that they would have to drink and socialize. He wasn't there to do such a thing. When Yu Lily saw that, she knew what was going on. She said into the phone, Forget it, Uncle Wen. Oming hasn't fully recovered yet. We shouldn't go and spoil your fun. It doesn't matter. There are only 3 of us and there are only 5 of you. We'll go back after eating. We won't drink or socialize. Don't be afraid. When Fenglin's voice was filled with ridicule as he asked, Which room are you in? Shall I bring you over? It just so happens that you're also a painter, so it's not a bad thing for us to meet. In all fairness, Uncle Wen treated him very well. Since he had already put it that way, Yu Lily would feel bad if she tried to turn him down again. In the end, he relented and reported the room number. He reached out and pinched Yu Lily's face and said, I'm tired of pretending. Do you know that? Yu Lily was a little embarrassed and smiled apologetically. I forgot. Oming had an urge to strangle her. Soon Wen Fenglin arrived at the scene. When he saw the 2 young people, his mood lifted significantly. He said, What a coincidence. Let's go. They're all waiting for you. There weren't many people, but it wasn't easy to accept. When Oming saw Zhenli, his face darkened. Chapter 1243. The moment she entered, Yu Lili saw Zhenli. Beside Zhenli sat a middle-aged man who looked to be about the same age as Wen Fenglin. Yu Lili wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but the moment she entered, she felt the middle-aged man's gaze land on her. His gaze seemed to be probing, doubtful, and nostalgic. The complicated emotions made Yu Lili look over as well. She was a little confused. Before Yu Lili could confirm anything, the middle-aged man's gaze quickly shifted away. "Come, let me introduce you." Wen Fenglin let Ming and Yu Lili take their seats before he started speaking with a smile. "This is Xiao Jiao's son. Zhenli has probably met him before. His name is Ming. This is Ming's girlfriend Yu Lili." Zhenli smiled and extended his hand toward Yu Lili. "Hello, Miss Yu. I'm Zhenli." Just as Yu Lili was about to extend her hand to shake Zhenli's, she could clearly feel a cold aura emanating from beside her. But her hand was already extended halfway. If she retracted it, wouldn't that be too deliberate? How could Uncle Wen keep his face after this? Yu Lili had no choice but to bite the bullet and extend her hand. After shaking Zhenli's hand gently, she immediately retracted it. She reached out and gently squeezed Ming's hand. The smile on her face faded. As for Ming, he had already switched to playing blind. Since he couldn't see anything, there was no need for him to care. How could Wen Fenglin not see through Ming's intentions? He didn't care and introduced the other person besides Zhenli to Yu Lili. "This is the chairman of the province's art association, Zhen Xianlang. He used to be a good friend of mine. We haven't seen each other for many years. We only met this year," Wen Fenglin introduced. Zhen Xianlang and Zhenli looked alike. One look and anyone could tell that they were father and son. However, Zhen Xianlang's facial features were more amiable than Wen Fenglin's. He looked more capable. His eyes were big, bright and full of expression, and he looked sharp and capable. "Hello." Zhen Xianlang extended his hand toward Yu Lili and said, "Miss Yu is really beautiful. Xiao is really lucky to have found such a beautiful girlfriend." It was obviously a polite greeting to change the topic to Ming. Everyone present knew that Ming's expression softened when he heard that. So be it. It was better than pestering his woman and refusing to let go. Ming curled his lips and nodded. "My luck is not bad. She doesn't despise me even though I'm like this. This must be true love." It was obvious teasing, but in reality, it was a show of force. Zhenli was a smart person. He replied with a smile, "Isn't that so? This is true love." Zhen Xianlang couldn't help but laugh. He quickly changed the topic and exchanged a few words with Ming. Lili and Xianlang and Shen. From time to time, Zhen Xianlang and Zhenli would talk to Ming. Yu Lili sat to the side and occasionally helped Ming peel the shells of prawns and pick up fish fillets. She didn't interrupt their conversation. Ming they were talking but they li and said the topic. As and when Zhen and was. One and Yu Li, and. As Zhen Lilzhen and Ming Zhen Ming said li. Chapter 1244. What she wanted to say was suddenly interrupted. Yu Lili stretched out her elbow and nudged Ming. When Zhenli and Zhen Xianlang heard that, they looked at each other. Zhen Xianlang looked at Wen Fenglin and said with a smile, "I see. To be honest, I find Miss Yu a little familiar. What do you think, Lao Wen?" Wen Fenglin was in the middle of eating when he heard that. His heart skipped a beat. "You think so too? How could that be? This is the first time they've met." He maintained his composure on the surface and turned to look at Yu Lili. He pretended to scrutinize her for a moment and nodded his head. "She does look a little familiar. Does she look like Xianer?" Xian? Yu Lili was no stranger to that name. Old Mrs. Shen had also mentioned that she looked like Xianer. But it wasn't the physical resemblance. It was the charm. Yu Lili lowered her head awkwardly when she heard Zhen Xianlang's words. She smiled and asked, "So you know Xianer as well?" Zhen Xianlang was surprised and asked, "You know her?" "Yeah. I've heard Uncle Wen mention her before. I've also heard a grandmother mention her. She also said that I look a little like Xian. I guess so. But who's the grandmother you're talking about?" "Xianer's aunt. Old Shin's half-fairy," Wen Fenglin replied. When Zhen Xianlang heard that, he knew who it was. He smiled and lowered his head in shame. "Xianer is my wife." "What?" Yu Lili was stunned. She looked at Wen Fenglin. "Isn't Xianer Wen Fenglin's lover? According to old Mrs. Shen, Xianer's health isn't very good. Shouldn't she be unable to get married? How could she have such an old child?" Zhenli looks to be at least 21 or 22 years old. Wen Fenglin looked over at the same time and smiled. His two deep dimples were embedded in his cheeks. They were deep and beautiful. He looked at her with a deep gaze. It was as if he was looking at her, but it was also as if he was looking at someone else. Xian'er has passed away. Yu Lili knew that and nodded her head. But she didn't know what to say. After thinking for a while, he asked, I heard from Grandmother Shen that Aunt Xian'er doesn't seem to be in good health. Yes. Her health wasn't very good, Zhen Xianlang replied. He looked at Yu Lili with a hint of loneliness and said, when she passed away I was studying in the north. I didn't even get to see her one last time. When Fenglin heard that, he seemed to have thought of something and laughed mirthlessly. You were in the north at that time. Why didn't you bring her over? When Zhen Xianlang heard that, he looked Fenglin in the eye and sighed. You're still blaming me? Fenglin choked on his words. He looked away and coldly said, I have no right to blame you. I can only blame myself. There was a story. The relationship between these two elders was not shallow. Yu Lili's mind instantly conjured up a drama. Fenglin was a poor boy who fell in love with Xian'er, the daughter of a wealthy family. Because he was too poor, the girl's family objected. Later, Xian'er was forced to marry Zhen Li's father, who was rich and powerful. Wasn't it said that Xian'er's health wasn't good enough to bear a child? In other words, Zhen Li's father ignored Xian'er's health and forced her to bear a child for him. That was why Xian'er died. Chapter 1245. Therefore, when Uncle Wen introduced Zhen Li's father to her just now, he said, my good friend, instead of, my good friend. This was the difference, right? Yu Lili seemed to have figured out the cause and effect of all this, and she also understood their current feelings. Because of a woman, good friends would not turn against each other, but they would gradually drift apart. There was a dead man between the two brothers. However, Zhen Li's father still had a child left behind by that woman. As for Uncle Wen, he had nothing. For so many years he had been alone. Even as a bystander, Yu Lili felt some sympathy for him. She was so engrossed in her thoughts that she didn't even hear when Uncle Wen called out to her. Oming pulled her gently and asked, Are you full? Yu Lili calmed down and nodded. Yes, I'm full. Let's go. All right. Yu Lili stood up and realized that the atmosphere was strangely awkward. What happened? Yu Lili was very curious, but she had to be distracted at this time. Seeing that Uncle Wen and Oming had both stood up, she lowered her head, took Oming's hand and walked forward. However, he could not help but turn to look at Zhen Xianlang curiously. This elder seemed to be looking at her differently. Could it be that he really treated her like Xian'er? Feeling a little awkward, Yu Lili quickly followed Oming out. When they were outside, Fenglin looked at Yu Lili and said with a smile, That guy is just like that. You do look a little like Xian'er. If I didn't know that Xian'er had never given birth to a child, I would have thought that you were her daughter. Xian'er didn't give birth? Not having children and not being able to have children were two different concepts. Yu Lili looked at Fenglin strangely and asked, How could that be? Wasn't that Zhen Li just now Xian'er's child? Fenglin shook his head. No. The child is only in his early 20s. As for Xian'er, she passed away 24 or 25 years ago. 24 or 25 years ago. Isn't that about the same age as Yu Lili? Yu Lili's heart suddenly beat faster, and she subconsciously looked at Oming. Oming's expression seemed to change a little, but it didn't change much at the moment. Yu Lili thought for a moment and asked, Uncle Wen, do you have a photo of Andy Xian'er? Everyone was saying that they looked alike, but Yu Lili had never even seen a photo of them. When Fenglin heard that, he immediately understood. What? Are you finally curious? Yu Lili nodded her head. Yeah. I heard from Granny Shen that we don't really look alike. At least, you can't tell at first glance, but yes, the more we get to know each other, the more similar I feel. As he spoke, Fenglin took out his leather armor and carefully took out a photo that had already been molded. The photo was in black and white. The pixels back then didn't seem to be very high. Even the facial features on his face were blurry. However, the photo was well preserved. The woman in the photo was gentle and beautiful with a peaceful smile. But at first glance, Yu Lili felt a sense of familiarity with him. Like. Chapter 1246. Surrogacy. 24 to 25 years ago, how did Andy Xian'er die? Yu Lili asked as she handed the photo back to him. As soon as she asked the question, she immediately realized that it wasn't a good question. Indeed, Fenglin smiled. There was a hint of sadness in his smile. Xian'er's body was on the cold side, and she was naturally afraid of the cold. Fortunately, our family conditions weren't too bad, and we managed to raise her until she was 20. But in order to be with me, she secretly went to the small house I was renting to look for me in the middle of a snowy day. When Feng Lin paused for a moment, he sounded remorseful. Perhaps she was frozen. We stayed in the small house for 2 days. On the third day, Xian'er's body started to feel unwell. 2 words immediately appeared in Yu Lily's mind: elopement. In those days, elopement was a very serious matter. I was a poor student at the time. I was full of ideals and aspirations, but my finances were tight. I searched everywhere for medicine, but Xian'er's health didn't improve. So, I sent her back. When Yu Lily heard the first part of the story, she had already guessed what had happened. But when she heard the second part, her heart couldn't help but turn cold. How big of a decision did a rich young lady like her have to make before she decided to leave with you? But this man who had decided to follow her for the rest of his life had sent her back within a few days. What did that girl think? Just thinking about it made Yu Lily feel sorry for the girl. When Feng Lin saw the expression on Yu Lily's face, he could roughly guess what she was thinking. With a bitter laugh he asked, "Do you also think that what I did wasn't right?" Yu Lily saw the bitter expression on Feng Lin's face. She hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. "I also wanted to keep her by my side, but my circumstances weren't good enough. Xian'er was a very good girl. She shouldn't have suffered with me. She shouldn't have followed me. Even the most basic of health wasn't guaranteed." Feng Lin's small eyes were filled with sadness. "If she followed me, she wouldn't have had any protection. We weren't from the same world at all." When she heard that, Yu Lily found it familiar. We weren't from the same world. The anger in her heart flared up. The way he looked at Feng Lin had changed. "So, if you send her back, will she be able to live well?" He thought he was doing it for the good of women, but was it really true? They claimed that it was for her own good, but in reality, it was just because of their selfishness that they did not want to bear that responsibility. Yu Lily gritted her teeth. She liked you so much that she ignored her family's objections to be with a single man like you. Her reputation was ruined, but you sent her back. Feng Lin was silent for a long time before he said, "I'm also her murderer." "You're the murderer who killed her." Yu Lily's words were merciless. "You men are so full of yourself. What you think is good for her, is it really good for her? How naive." Yu Lily was exasperated. What happened after that? She married that Jin guy? Yes. Yu Lily's conjecture was completely overturned. She had thought that Uncle Wen had no choice but to do this because of Xian'er's parents' objection. She had never imagined that it was all Uncle Wen's own doing. Chapter 1247. You're really muddle-headed. Yu Lily gritted her teeth and growled. Her heart was filled with disappointment. This was the first time in Feng Lin's life that he had been lectured by such a young girl. He didn't feel embarrassed. Instead, he felt even more guilty and remorseful. Xian'er's family started a timber business after the founding of the People's Republic. They were very influential in Ji province at the time, and they doted on their only daughter to the core. At that time, the Zhen family was a good match for them, and they had already set up an engagement. In other words, he was the so-called third party. Sigh. Yu Lily was infuriated just listening to it, but she didn't know what else to say. Wealthy families were particular about a good match. Just look at Oming's mother. That kind of prejudice had existed since ancient times. How could it be easy to change that? But looking at Feng Lin's current situation, she couldn't help but feel sorry for her gentle uncle. Oming gently patted Yu Lily's shoulder with his large, gentle hand. His eyes were unfocused, but his voice was steady as he asked, "Uncle Wen, where are you staying? Let's go back to Kingstown tomorrow. We've been here for a few days already." Feng Lin knew that Oming was trying to give him a way out of this embarrassing situation, he smiled and nodded his head. "All right, let's go. We'll go back together tomorrow. Which hotel are you staying at?" Yu Lily told him the name of the hotel. It was a little far from where Feng Lin was staying, but it was on the way. They hailed a cab and returned to the hotel together. On the way, no one spoke first. Yu Lily's mind was filled with countless possibilities. If Feng Lin had been more insistent and not sent Xian'er back, but had treated her himself, would the outcome have been different? What if Xian'er's body wasn't as weak as they had imagined? If Xian'er hadn't married Zhen Xianlang, would she have gone back to Feng Lin after she was cured? The more Yu Lily thought about it, the worse she felt. Xian'er was dead, and Feng Lin had been alone for more than 20 years. The man that Xiener had chosen in the end had chosen another man, and they had even given birth to a child. Zhen Xianlong's actions made Wen Fenglin feel particularly desolate. How hateful. However, Yu Lili also knew that her complaints were unreasonable. How could a man remain single for the rest of his life for a woman who had someone else in her heart? The Zhen family was a large family and he had his responsibilities. When Fenglin arrived first. After getting out of the car, Oming leaned over and asked in a low voice, "What are you thinking about?" Yu Lili shook her head, a little annoyed. When she returned to the hotel, she realized that her phone had been switched off. No wonder it was so quiet. He charged his phone and turned it on. There were more than a dozen missed calls. Shinjilia. Oming watched from afar. He looked at Yu Lili with a faint smile and asked, "Aren't you going to call him back?" Looking at his expression, Yu Lili knew that he was up to no good. She knew Shen. We master. Can. F. Chapter 1248. Yu Lili had just been dragged into the bathroom when she heard her cell phone ringing outside. It was undoubtedly Shinjilia who was calling at this time. This made Yu Lili naturally think of what had happened in the hotel room last night. Her face unconsciously turned red. She looked up and met Oming's eyes. Oming's eyes were filled with playfulness and ambiguity. He pulled her over and whispered, "Why is your face so red? What are you thinking of?" Yu Lili glared at him and didn't answer. She pulled her hand back and said, "I'm going to answer the phone." Answer the phone? Oming raised his eyebrows. There was some pride in his eyes. He immediately smiled and said, "You don't want to take a bath? You go fill the tub. I'll help you bathe later. Together. Why do you have to leave me behind?" Oming pulled her, but he didn't go into the bathroom. Instead, he pulled her to the bedside. Oming picked up the phone that was ringing non-stop and smiled. "I thought it was Shinjilia." "No." Yu Lili leaned over. "Then who is it?" "Yi Qianqian." He threw the phone to Yu Lili. Yu Lili looked at it and saw that it was indeed Yi Qianqian. She picked up the phone and heard Yi Qianqian's heavy sigh. "Hello, Qianqian. Lili, my life is so hard." Yi Qianqian's voice was bitter, and she immediately started to complain. From Yi Yuyu's injury she kept complaining about Shen Luo and the Shen family. Finally, she asked Yu Lili to help her ask for leave so that she could take care of her sister. Only then did Yu Lili hang up. In the bathroom, Oming had finished filling the tub. As he unbuttoned his shirt, he walked over to Yu Lili. Yu Lili had just hung up the phone when she felt a slight weight on her body. Oming reached across her chest and held her waist. He gently kissed her ear and said, "It's time to take a bath." Yu Lili's ear was tickled. She slightly moved away and said, "You have to let me go." Oming didn't want to let go. Looking at her petite body, he felt a little regret. If his hand hadn't been injured, it would have been best to carry her into the bathroom and help her take off her clothes and put her in the water. However, he only had one hand now, so he couldn't carry it at all. He could only loosen his grip, his gaze lingering on her body. "You've grown longer." When Yu Lili heard that, she subconsciously touched the hair beside her ear. Just as Yu Lili was about to speak, her phone rang again. This time it was Shinjilia. Oming clearly saw the name on it and raised his eyebrows slightly. When Yu Lili saw the phone, she was in no hurry to move. She sat on the bed and answered the call. Oming's eyes darkened. He had originally planned to go to the bathroom, but he immediately gave up. He leaned his knee against the side of Yu Lili's body and lowered his body. With one hand he pushed Yu Lili onto the bed. At the same time, the phone had been connected, and the person on the other side of the line could hear it clearly. Yu Lili immediately covered her mouth and glared at him. Oming acted as if he hadn't seen it and muttered to himself, "Is it Shinjilia? Take it. We'll continue later." Yu Lili stretched out her leg and kicked him, feeling even more embarrassed and annoyed. Chapter 1249. Shinjilia was silent for a moment before he asked, "Lili, are you with Oming?" When Yu Lili was about to speak, Oming suddenly pressed down on her. His big hand reached into her coat and lifted her clothes. "This guy is doing it on purpose." Yu Lili held her clothes tightly and stared at him as she answered, "Shinjilia, yes, I just returned to the hotel." Shinjilya felt a sense of crisis and quickly asked, "Have you returned to the hotel? In Oming's room or yours? I'll go find you." Yu Lily's hands were pressing down too hard. He couldn't lift her clothes at all, so he decided not to deal with her clothes. He reached out to her thighs and gently caressed them. Yu Lily slapped his hand hard and lifted her foot to kick it. She replied patiently, "We found a hotel near where Uncle Wen is. We'll go there tomorrow to pick up our luggage." "You're staying together?" Shinjilya heard the subtle sound and felt even more uneasy. He said, "Lily, since you've broken up, you should make a clean break. Return Oming to Uncle Wen and then come back here. Grandma misses you very much. There's another very important thing that Grandma wants to tell you in person." "What is it?" "Old Mrs. Shin actually has something important to tell me?" Yu Lily listened, but she was just listening. Every time old Mrs. Shin talked about something important, it would be a trivial matter. After making a fuss about it, there would be no further details. This time should be similar, so Yu Lily didn't take it to heart. "It's very important. When you come back, I'll let Grandma tell you." Shinjilya's voice was serious. It didn't sound like a joke or a lie. Yu Lily listened, but Oming had already changed his strategy. He directly touched her neck with one hand and gently pressed down. His lips fell on her face. She didn't know whether it was intentional or not, but the place where he kissed made a slight sound. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to pass through the phone. "Let's talk about it tomorrow. It's so late now. It's not good." Oming's voice sounded very close to the phone. Just as she was about to say something, Oming turned her face around with one hand and kissed her on the lips. Shocked, Yu Lily opened her mouth to speak, but Oming's tongue easily slipped in and gently teased her. Their tongues intertwined, emitting a soft sizzling sound. Yu Lily tried to push him away but failed. Holding the phone in her hand, her heart was beating fast. Oming's hand moved down and pinched her soft and plump breasts. He squinted at the phone, which was still in the middle of a call. He deliberately lowered his voice and said, "Is the call over?" "Go away." Yu Lily pushed his face away, but he had no intention of leaving. He got a little closer and said, "Are you done? I'm still waiting for you to help me bathe." Could this guy be any more deliberate? Yu Lily didn't know what to do with him. In a low voice she said, "Go away first. I'm on the phone. I'll help you wash it later." Chapter 1250. All right. Get out." Yu Lily gritted her teeth and took his hand away. However, such an action seemed to have fueled his interest even more. Instead, the giant hand moved even faster. Shinjilya listened to the movement and was silent for a moment. "What are you doing?" he asked. "He's drinking water by the side. I'm on the phone." "I see." Shinjilya felt a little relieved. "I'll pick you up. Which hotel are you staying at?" "No, I'll sleep here. Oming's eyes can't move, so I'll take care of him here. Don't worry, I got a double bedroom." Oming squinted at the 1.8-meter-long bed and looked at Yu Lily with a faint smile. Yu Lily looked straight ahead and said, "I'll go over there tomorrow. You should rest early. I have to help Oming take a bath." "It's not convenient for you, you're a girl. I've been with Oming for many years. It's okay to help him take a bath." Yu Lily pretended not to understand Shinjilya's concerns. "I'm hanging up." "Wait!" Shinjilya shouted. Yu Lily paused. When she was about to put the phone back to her ear, Oming pulled her over. After hanging up, he threw the phone aside. "He hasn't finished yet." Yu Lily kicked him. Her tone was inadvertently coquettish. However, when he heard the voice, Oming's eyes darkened, and he pulled down the pants that he had just peeled off halfway. Yu Lily pulled her pants up and kicked him again. She said angrily, "Go away. Take a bath." Oming pulled her up and said, "I'll help you take off your clothes." "No. One by one. I'll help you wash first and then I'll wash myself." Yu Lily pulled her pants up and put them on. When she stood up, she heard the phone ring again. It was Shinjilya again. Yu Lily answered the phone. "Hello. Be careful. Although Oming can't see, he's still a man. Don't let him bully you." Hearing this, Yu Lily felt even more guilty. When she was about to say something, she looked up and saw the strange look in Oming's eyes. "Okay. Go to bed early. Good night." Yu Lily said goodbye. After a few seconds, she hung up. "What did he say?" Oming leaned over and asked in a low voice. "You told me to be careful of you, you big pervert." She pushed him away again and stomped toward the bathroom. Oming raised his eyebrows and hugged her from behind. He smiled and said, Is that so? Is he so worried about me? I'm worried about you too. Ming nodded in agreement and said, You're right to worry about me. Come, let's go in. Go. Help me take off my clothes. Ming pulled her hand and put it on his clothes. I can't take my hands off. Lily looked at him suspiciously. When she saw his indifferent and serious look, she reached out and took off his clothes one by one. His shirt was taken off. Lily tugged at him and said, Come in. But Ming was still not satisfied. He said, Pants? Lily then turned around and reluctantly helped him take off his clothes. But as soon as she got closer, she clearly noticed that he was not calm. Lily blushed. She looked up and saw that Ming was still pretending to be human. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.